right, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. And the first agenda item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next agenda meeting is correspondence, visitors, and public comments. And your name, please?
My name is Jennifer Raynack, R-A-Y-N-A-K. I have a little handout, adorable. I am an MVU graduate. I graduated in 1987, and then for 25 years I worked as a professional technical theater person and designer. And I moved back here in 2021, and I've been doing, this will be my third year doing the musical. And so I've gotten pretty intimate with the lighting fixtures, and I was super excited to hear that the chairs are being replaced in the theater, so I just thought I'd throw in that the lighting fixtures are also in need of some help. On your little one sheet, you can see the old ones. The old ones were original to the building, most of them. Manufactured in the 50s and 60s. They use incandescent lamps and use a lot of power. And almost no light comes out because they're very old and decrepit. The new modern fixtures are LEDs and would save a lot of money on the power bill. As you all know from going through the process of getting to the seating replacement, that room gets used a lot. The lights also get used a lot. They're very difficult. I've been Frankensteining them together for the last couple of years. I've also purchased 11 lights out of my own pocket and some control equipment that failed that we needed right away because the process of getting things purchased through here is tricky, and we didn't quite have the time for that. So I am just bringing to your attention that although Mr. Garceau and Mr. Ostrander before him did their best to keep things running, and I'm doing my best to keep things running, it is pretty bad up there. And we're lucky to have any light come out at this point. So just throwing in there, and I suspect that there are green energy or energy efficiency grants available for this sort of project because it is a big energy saver, and I would be more than happy to be assigned to help with that. Dan has all my contact information. Just wanted to throw in there that this is a pretty big concern for those of us who are trying to do shows in the theater. Thank you.
Would you mind please writing your email address?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh, also on the back of this one sheet is I've worked up an estimated budget for replacing the lighting fixtures, which Dan and I have discussed, but I'm happy to go over it with whoever.
We have a facilities committee.
Great.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you. We have a facilities committee that does all the looking into for the building repairs and stuff. So.
Fantastic. If there's any way I can work with them to find some money to replace these fixtures, it would make a big difference for all of us who work in the theater. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Any other public comments? Do we have anybody online that?
I just see our board members and administrators.
Okay, perfect. Seeing no others, we'll move to the next agenda item, which is the agenda review. I don't think we have any changes to. Okay. Perfect. And then the next agenda item is the approval for minutes from December 19th of 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from December 19th, 2023.
Peter is the first.
Second.
Devin's the second. Any discussion?
I talked to Julie earlier today, just the motion that we made after executive session just has the vote on there, but I think it would, I'd just like to see it clearer to state that the motion failed.
And I will make that change. I just didn't have the time
Yeah.
before this meeting, but I will go into the minutes and switch that.
Any other comments? All right, all those in favor of approving the December 19th minutes with the adjustment of the motion failed after executive session, please say aye.
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 I was on it, so.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanne and Kelly and Rennick. Can't hear him. There's a chat message.
Rennick just says, it's just an I. And
Okay, perfect, thank you. Motion carries 8-0. And the next agenda item is the MVU report. Does anybody have any questions from the MVU administrative report, or would like to point something out, or comments?
We did have one contact, we did illustrate. Wasn't that big a deal, it was just something that I was gonna comment on, but I'll have to go back and I read it too long ago.
But we're just continuing our aspirations work. We had an aspirations meeting today. That's the post-secondary high school work, education and training that we're doing with VSAC. We had a meeting with them. We meet with them every 2 weeks. And that's going well. We just kind of planned out what we're doing in the next couple of weeks. We had Operation Holiday, which is a little bit different than Operation Happiness, but it's run by Nikki Reese. And this year, over 37 children were served by Operation Holiday. It's just she kind of puts out there, like, we need snow pants or boots or gloves or toys for somebody, this age, and people can just kind of sign up for those. So this year, over 37 students were served, within our district. I think most everyone hopefully had the opportunity to see the climate and assessment data on the article out of the Messenger. Just a lot of other kind of, the holiday concerts that time of year. A couple of pictures there of Dave Zabo dressed up in the olden days. And
Dan, I noticed the middle school winter sports awards, I didn't see that on there for the high school, that is not scheduled yet.
the high school one will actually be after the March 5th date. That's why I didn't go too far into March yet. So I usually just try to give you this month and the following month, and the high school one will be on, give me 1 second. I just want to make sure I have the date actually right. Cabaret. It's not on the master calendar at the moment, so dress rehearsal. Yeah, no, I don't see it on the master calendar. I can make sure we take a look at it. But it should be, my guess is, Brooke, do you know what it might be? Have you heard? The high school sports awards night? Have you heard?
I don't know.
Not sure?
Not a clue. My mom just tells me.
Your mom just tells you when to go. Oh, there it is. Monday, or I'm sorry, March 12th, Tuesday, March 12th, 6 to 7 p.m.
Don, you have a question?
Bob,
Or comment?
there was a comment. When I read your report, of course, the Ag Committee that
Yep.
Joanne and I serve on, I checked my calendar, and I think we decided to meet on the same night as maybe we have a school board meeting, or am I wrong? We just need to check that out at some point.
No, I think it was
Around the Valentine's Day.
advisory
I
committee.
checked.
It was the 13th. So I think we're scheduled to meet for the board on the 6th, and then the Ag Advisory Committee is on the 13th,
Okay, all right.
and then the following week is another board meeting.
Okay, we're all set then.
Yeah, should be all set. Yeah, we chose the off week.
The other comment I guess I would have is that with Dan's leadership, and the other people from the department, teachers. I really feel we're moving in a very positive direction. I like the fact that everybody seems to participate in the discussions. It's not just one or two people controlling it, so hats off to Dan and people with the ag department.
Yeah, we're really trying to revamp that ag committee a little bit. I'm not sure if.
Next month, we'll bring.
Okay, yep.
the
We're just kind of
names to
revamping
the
it, so we'll
board.
talk a little bit more about it next month, but, yep.
Good.
Dan, have you got any comments about the new sign, any positive feedback or?
You know, I mean, not a lot of neither here nor there. I mean, I occasionally hear from people that, you know, it's, you know, they catch a glimpse of it and they like it, and, but, you know, nothing, usually I only hear like when something's not going well, so
Yeah.
no news is good news in that regard, so. But, you know, it's, you know, I have heard people just say, you know, they like seeing the events out there, but, yeah.
Okay.
Anything for Christie?
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you all as well.
Moving right along, we've got the district newsletter. Excuse me. Anybody have any comments, questions on the administrative reports, superintendent's reports, or Wendy's reports, Beth Ann's, Tanya's?
Tanya is here.
I will say I've seen kids all over town wearing the MVSD hats. It's been great. They all love them. So that was a nice thing to do.
It was a wonderful thing to do. Bonnie and Laura really spearheaded the whole idea, and logistically getting them in time, they were amazing to make sure that every kid had a hat, and hopefully everyone, by the time they left for the break. And it was just fun going into classrooms and handing them out, and the kids were excited. And then in Franklin, Tim was there, so we got to go on the hayride. It wasn't a bad day, I'm not gonna lie. But it really was. It was great to see, and they're everywhere. Jay Hartman came by to talk to me about something today. He left with a hat. He had seen them at the hockey rink, and yeah.
And students who would not think of wearing a winter hat will wear an MV. Yes,
Mhm.
yeah.
I bet you I saw 40 of them in the hallway today.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted.
Great. Excellent.
Question, the Act 127 video, it might have been my system, I don't know, the audio kicked out on it, that isn't a problem with the video, is it? Or is it?
No, so
Okay.
it might have been your bandwidth or
Okay.
something. But it
I'll
really,
try to listen to it again.
it was one of JR's usual high production, talking at a high level about the purpose of the law. And it was great that the whole Champlain Valley came together to produce that, to help explain why the legislature made a change.
Is he on the radio doing an ad for, I think, Vermont State College?
It could well be, I don't know. He does
Sounds
do
like
he
it.
does voiceover work.
Yes, he probably is.
He works professionally.
Yeah,
So.
okay.
All right.
Legislative breakfast coming up?
Yes, thank you for that. I have a planning meeting in the next week or so with regional superintendents, but it does look like that first week of February at Northwest Career and Technical Center, probably in their restaurant, the Hideaway, I think it is. And we will have our talking points that are not particularly different. Mental health, teacher shortages, all of those pieces, career and workforce development. So as we get closer with times and anything, maybe we want personal invitations to anyone, we'll let you know.
Makes me laugh, a common school calendar. Actually, when I was regional chair of the superintendents in 1985, we discussed about regional calendar, went to the legislature. A bill passed and nobody followed it. Well, not nobody.
Well, we have a common calendar, but it's not all that common. And it is one of the recommendations that came out of the Career and Technical Center directors. And then also there was an APA report, I'm not sure what the acronym is for, about Tech Center. And they're recommending a much more cohesive calendar that would help promote technical education access.
There was one time there was a report that showed some tech center students missed more than 20% of the school year because their high school did not cooperate with the tech center. But that was a while ago.
It's not unusual. You know, we work together, but even just the length of day is a problem. And
Yeah, they
the
had a
half
trimester.
days and the trimesters versus semesters. It's more than just a calendar, but it is, we are trying to
Good.
even regionally do it a little more consistently.
Any improvements better than
Absolutely. But we'll see if the legislature takes it up.
the school facilities issue. I know at one time with leadership of Jeff Francis and others, there was, maybe the agency even got involved in this. Remember there's been that study of all, how
Oh,
many
yes.
$1 billion we have.
And they've just done an assessment and that has strengths and challenges. And there will be further action in the legislative session about who holds the purse strings, if there is a purse to hold, and what that would look like. And so we will have things to say about that, should there be legislation developed.
Anybody else for comments?
One thing on board member elections, but do we have people running for all vacant seats?
No, do you have your petition in yet? I know the answer to that question. So I'm looking.
I am currently working on that as of today. I'm sorry, but it'll be in by next week. And
The petitions I have so far are one from Purette,
Yep.
Franklin, and I have a petition from Julie Rivers for the treasurer opening. And I believe that's all we have right now.
So Toby's running.
Toby is more likely than not running.
Fair enough.
You know, this year, I think in October, we started talking about it, hoping people would come out.
We had some folks who were taking it seriously, but then had to back out. So, and we will continue to look.
can we?
So we could have Swanton might not be filled. I've heard we've had one from Franklin. And Highgate, we have someone.
We don't.
We still don't, because Kelly's up, because she's just filling out a year.
So are we actively looking for those two
Yeah,
seats
if-
for someone to run?
If we could, the seesaw for Highgate worked well.
We can do that for both
And
schools.
yeah, I was just gonna ask him if we could for Swan.
Because I wanted to hear from Toby if he had made up his mind. The 29th. The 29th.
You have time to change your mind.
Yeah, there's other board openings that
Mhm.
kind of are pulling at me as well, so. It's been great. School board, best. I recommend anyone give it a shot.
Yeah, some of them's
It's been a good run.
Absolutely.
It's not easy.
We will push that out.
Perfect. run something else on the, do you think they would run it on the board, their boards, like in Swanton in the park, they have their board, their little billboard, and then up in Highgate on theirs at the town clerk's office as well, maybe if they even did it for like a half a day, a couple days a week
I
or something.
can ask.
That'd be great.
And we have our board as well, which we can put it up.
Yep, during traffic of drop-off or pickups, times would probably be really good. Doesn't have to be all day, but.
I had a comment, let me comment. When I read the curriculum report, I was also thinking of publicity for our budget. And is there some way either the administration or board chairs report could emphasize some of those curriculum improvements that we've been working on?
That's part of our plan, absolutely.
Okay, because I think, we like facilities and some of the other things, and people are always interested in the money, but I think we've done some really good things in recent years to coordinate and improve the curriculum. I think it'd be nice to kind of give it a star or two in the report.
I would really like to do that. We were thinking of doing a video. Kosha probably doesn't know she might be starring. But the other thing is, like, our state VT cap testing results, we're proud of. They're embargoed still. I may write them in our annual report letter anyway, because hopefully they'll be unembargoed by the time it prints. I did that last year, and they didn't do anything terrible to me. But I think that we have a lot of celebrations that we want to share, because we've been making investments and we want to show the direction that the district and the schools are moving. So, we have students here.
Yes. Moving right along, we've got presentations and discussions, and we've got the girls' hockey teacher appreciation night update for Rainville and Kirby King. Hi, ladies.
So do you want to tell us just a little bit about like the teacher appreciation game and how it kind of came about?
We do a teacher appreciation game. Well, this is our second year now. And last year each player gave their jersey to their teacher that made an impact or just someone that they really liked. This year we actually bought t-shirts instead because the jerseys just don't fit everybody and we didn't feel that was fair. So our teachers' t-shirts actually came in today and they look great and we are very anxious to give them out to our teachers. We have our teachers come to the game, like they're invited. We sent out a notice like 2 months ago, I think, about the game and to like mark their calendars. And it's not just for the people that get jerseys or t-shirts, it's for all teachers and support staff, anybody. We have them go to the game, we take a picture with them, and it's just like a really fun event.
And when is the game?
January 20th? Yep, January 20th.
At the Highgate Hockey Rink?
Yes.
So do the teachers know they're getting a t-shirt, or do you surprise
So no,
them? Okay.
not right now. They will find out the 19th, because our game's a Saturday, so we're gonna give them the t-shirts that Friday morning, hopefully, and then they can, if they want to, wear that t-shirt all day. It just says like I Heart, and then it'll say the girls ice hockey. And we got t-shirts, so our team will be wearing ones that say we love our teachers and support staff. So they have the option to wear theirs.
How do you guys go about giving out the jerseys again, or the t-shirts?
Last year we would have you kind of write up a little thing of like, I'm choosing you because, and explain it. And then like, we have our game tomorrow, please come. Like, we love you, so this is why we're doing this, to show appreciation. Last year we had quite a few people take little videos or take pictures, and it's just to like, make it known that we appreciate all of our teachers.
Can you remind us how this all got started?
I actually saw a TikTok, and I'm pretty sure I texted Kirby and I was like, this is something really cool. I was like, I've never seen anybody, like, even around our area do it. And so me, Kirby, and maybe one of our other captains went to Mr. Lumpson, our athletic director, and was like, we want to do this. And he said, plan it, and I'm on board. So this year we made a few tweaks, that way it's all inclusive, and
So it came from the team.
yes,
That's great.
the team loves it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think it's one of like our most fun events that we do. It's the teachers are just so happy, like when you give them something, they just seem so appreciative, and it's really fun for us too.
It's also player ran. So our coaches have none, like they don't help us plan any of this. It wasn't their idea. They love it, but they don't have any part of it. So it's awesome to see all of our team getting involved with our teachers and hopefully getting other teams to do this kind of thing, whether it's the winter or fall sports.
So where do you get your funding?
We actually convinced Mr. Lumsden to pay for the teachers' t-shirts, and the players are paying for their own t-shirts.
So Mr. Lumsden.
We're really good at convincing him.
We're standing on his child.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great, that's great. Takes a lot of courage to went to Mr. Lumsden and say, we need money for a t-shirt.
Mr. Lumsden and I are very good friends.
You wanna be careful who you associate with
I know.
sometimes. That's great, wonderful.
Do you have anything? Did you want to add anything?
No, I'm good.
Just like, gone.
Pass it to Mr. Palmer and Mr. Lumsden. Because what I've noticed when my girls have gone through different experiences, and I think it's a plus for MVU, is if it sounds reasonable and it's reasonable, I think the administration is very typical of almost student-run completely, things like that, which is good. If you go to the NHS, National Honor Society induction ceremonies, they're very interesting because it's really the kids running it, I should say the students running it, which is great. The administration and teachers seem to be more just there to support the students running the show, which is good.
I mean, from my perspective, it's what you want to see. You want to see the student leaders stepping up and coming to you with ideas, and you want to support those ideas when they come to you with pretty great stuff. And in this situation, Brooke first came to Mr. Lumsden and I last year about this, and very early on, it was very, it was a win-win-win situation all the way around. You got to recognize teachers for being very supportive of kids. Students wanted to lead this and show their support and drum up more people at games. I mean, it was just there was nothing, you were looking at it and you're like, it wasn't going to cost anything. You're just exchanging jerseys, and the teacher gets to wear the jersey for the day, and it just opened up a lot of conversations around, who gave you your jersey? That's awesome. That's fantastic. That's great stuff. And Brooke was talking about this pretty much right at the end of last year's event. Was like, all right, I got ideas on how I'm going to improve this for next year. And like all summer long, like this is what we're doing. Like, great, let's run with it. And so you want those, and support those student leaders as much as possible, which leads us right into kind of the next thing, being a student leader.
It's like you're saying too, Dan, it's, I can imagine the teachers, they know they have an effect on the kids, right? But when a kid comes to you and you actually see that you've changed their life, I mean, that's gotta be big for the teachers too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, teachers love it.
Yeah.
And, I just speaking from Kirby and Brooke's perspective, I mean, the teacher's reaction when you go and give this to them, I mean.
My teacher cried last year.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's also like a big difference this year is that they also will have like the player's number on the back of this t-shirt they're getting. So on the back it says #MVU proud, and so my adult will be getting one that says 17 on the back of it, and Kirby's will be getting one that has a 9. So it's also something that's like, it's not just MVU girls, it's like this certain individual chose you.
So are you training younger members of the hockey team to take over when you graduate?
Listen, I'm trying. I'm hoping that once I'm gone next year that they all will continue the teacher appreciation game. and add any more games that they come up with.
It's great.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, but Kirby's gone in 2 years.
Kirby's gonna take the whole village.
It gives her 2 years to train the next
Yeah.
person under her.
And you guys just had your cancer game,
Yeah,
cancer
we
awareness
just-
game last weekend.
We just had our paint game.
Yep. So I mean, you know, lots of activities, lots of events, and yeah, just lots of great stuff going on.
So next on our agenda is the Heisman High School Scholarship Student Recognition. And
Do you want me to read it and you stand up and hand
That'd
the
be great.
certificate? I will use my teacher voice. So the Heisman Memorial Trophy is annually awarded to the most outstanding college football player in the nation. But the Heisman High School Scholarship extends the Heisman prestige to our nation's most esteemed high school seniors by recognizing and rewarding outstanding scholar athletes who understand that the most important victories not only happen on the field, but in their schools and communities. These remarkable young leaders set an example and make a game-changing difference every day, paving the way to greatness for everyone around them. We are really very proud to recognize one of this year's recipients of the Heisman High School Scholarship, MVU senior Brooke Rain.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
You have to look at Mr. Palmer.
Oh. And that's gonna go to Ruth Lily Rush, with the message.
Yes.
So, all right.
We really are very proud of you. It's a big
Thank you.
achievement.
Very nice.
We expect to be reading in the messenger the next 3 years, what you're doing. Expectations.
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you
Have a
both for
great
coming.
day.
Drive carefully.
Be safe. So at this time, I'm gonna let all the administrators go online, if you'd like to. I wanted to ask her if that was, if that was the pink Stanley Cup that everybody went to Target to get. She had her pink Stanley Cup.
Might very well been, yeah.
Yeah, that was,
Selling for like $499.
I know, on Amazon. I did get the chance to tell her that, I've watched Brooke since she was, and Toby has as well, played sports since she was like yay high. She's always been really excellent, like, an excellent athlete, but I mean, just her, like, her attitude has always been positive and encouraging, to her other teammates and stuff, so, yeah.
That's great stuff. Did you want to do Janet, who's here to talk about science?
I
Yes.
forgot. I'm sorry, Janet. You're right there. I don't know how.
Just gotta flip the page. So next we have the science department from Janet, information. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm honored to be here to talk about our department. I couldn't be more proud of the science department over the years here at Missisquoi. And to thank everyone and to really show my appreciation for the renovations that have been done to each of the rooms, running water, and it doesn't sound like much, but when you're doing science labs, sinks and running water and all the sinks, it makes a huge difference. And just the modern equipment, the countertops and the tables, the cabinets has made a huge difference. And just bringing that pride for our students, and they're very proud that the rooms look so nice, especially those students that we had in prior years come back and are like, wow, when did you get this? And we want to explain. So it really makes a difference to them, and they do notice, and that's important for our students.
That's good to hear because this facility has needed a lot of attention in recent years. It's been around a long while, and we had comments when we were at MVU board, we had comments at that time. Now, I won't say so much about the quality of the instructors, but the limitations of the facility. So it's good, we finally got something done.
It is absolutely beautiful. I was here as a student, graduated in 1983, and it's the same equipment, and some things weren't working then that were still not working coming here as a teacher. So it's nice to see them fixed and upgraded, and it's just absolutely beautiful, the work that's been done and added to our department. In fact, I spoke to a few teachers today, and I'm like, I'm going to the school board tonight, is there anything, any wishes, not that I can grant any wishes of any kind or requests, and they're like, we just have everything, it's just so nice, and so they have a lot of pride, even the new teachers that new hires over the summer.
Are there science courses that we should be teaching that we aren't teaching?
We lost robotics, but we have cooking with chemistry, and there's students that just absolutely love that class and the way that Miranda's working with that curriculum. She's touching on a lot of different standards, so I don't know. I'd like to think about that, but I would like an environmental science class. That's my own bias, but do we touch on environmental science in all of our classes? Our standards definitely address that, so I don't feel like we need to have a separate class for that. But environmental science, our climate change, and everything that's happening, it needs to be addressed, and I think students would have a high interest in it.
One of the reasons I ask, and I'm certain all the people this way, once had a student come to my office and say, I'd like to take astronomy. And we were able to do it online, honestly. But if we were in St. Johnsbury's, astronomy would be there.
Maybe Lindenville also or something. We do touch on definitely space. We touch on space and the stars in 7th grade science. So it's taught at every single level. It's just not the depth that you would have in one course. So I understand that. That makes sense.
Are there any things that you're able to do with the newer equipment? Obviously, when you didn't have running water, that limited, but do you have different hands-on science experiences that you can put into your units that you didn't have before?
Well, we have our smart boards. Every room is equipped with a smart board, which that in itself, you can graph with a smart board. It has a graphing, app, and we have in the 7th grade, we have a digital microscope, and so we're using that digital microscope with our smart boards, and it's just truly all the technology and software that we have that has been made available to us has really made a difference. In 7th grade, we have a tech book, so our students have glossaries and information, and the book goes from K to 12, and it's just absolutely amazing and totally aligned to our national standards. So I just feel like I couldn't be more proud of, what's made available to our students in the science department at MVU.
That's good.
Do you find that with all the upgrades and all the technology that you have to teach the science classes, that the kids are more enthusiastic about learning and more eager to get into the classroom and
I do believe that. And someone said, oh my God, you teach middle school? And I'm like, you have no idea how lucky I am to teach middle school science. Kids just love to come to my class. They don't, they work really, really hard when they're in there, but they just love coming because they haven't had science. They've had science in the elementary schools, but not to the depth that they have at MVU. And I remember hearing a few weeks ago, sometime in November, we were doing a lab and we were using some chemicals, and not a lot of chemicals, and a student said, this is what I'm talking about. This is science. And it was, I had to chuckle to myself overhearing them talk to each other about it. So it's something they look forward to when they come to MVU, which I know the elementary schools do a fine job. I do know that. But when they get up here, they have science every day, and that makes a difference. We just love it. And part of that gives you that enthusiasm and love as a teacher to continue teaching that subject. Questions? Science fair is February 8th. At this point, we have about 50, just under 50 students they're planning to present. I know a few years ago we had a large number, but we're looking forward to these, almost 50 good quality projects. There are 17 to 18 just in our science honors which are students that are ninth graders that are taking this honors class. They do a lot at home and a lot on their own before and after school, but they do some work with the teachers and get that guidance during T-bird time. So I thought that was a great way to get that piece in. And all the AP Bio students are doing a project, but not all of them are presenting, and same thing with 10th grade. They're all experiencing that scientific method and that process. But it's nice to have really good projects present at a high school level.
I'm glad that's a big deal during COVID. Something else.
Yeah.
So I know my oldest, who's a freshman in college now, really liked it, enjoyed it. Couldn't get my youngest to do it, but she's on a different track, I think. Anyway, she's at the tech center. But yeah, I think that's great. And at one point there was pretty good community involvement too. I don't. Is there still judges from, or?
I didn't participate last year
Yeah.
In the process, so I don't know what the judging will be this year, but it was, I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it was- we had a lot of alum who have a connection, like pharmacy. You know, they're pharmacists, but they're coming in. So that would be great. If that would be my only. If I had a wish list, is if we could somehow engage those community stakeholders that maybe don't even have kids here, but would love to come to, you know, even some of the. I would think even some of the, you know, our people working at like our machinists at some of the that are alum, you know, could probably handle the. I don't know how the judging goes or anything.
Yeah.
But it was great. I know Ella's year when I came up, there was lots of adults from the community that were wouldn't have come but for the science fair to help evaluate, judge.
It's really interesting when I judged before COVID, what I was looking at as an educator was very different from the community member who's in a science-based profession and what they were noting. So it was really, I think, you know, I think they appreciated that from somebody in the field in a different way because it was more authentic.
I agree.
Well, last year we had some people who went on to the state and did very well, right?
Yes, they did. They did very well. A few years before that, before COVID, our students did very well. In fact, we had some middle school students that won a $500 award for their presentation. So trying to beef up that middle school piece of it is a little harder. We do have Genius Hour now as one of our electives here at MVU, and so that's why I'm trying to encourage some of our 7th graders and 8th graders to participate in that in one way. We use that time that we used to use for science fair, we now do WIN, which is what I need. It's a time where we work with kids on skills in math and in ELA. So that science fair piece is no longer available for us, but we do have Genius Hour, so I'm working on that with people that are working in that area.
Since Mr. Palmer was a former middle school principal, you think he'd be really good?
Well, we work on him every once in a while. We needle him a little bit.
Still do, yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you. And if you have any questions at any point, feel free to drop in. I'd love you to take a field trip to one of our classrooms and see what's going on. Our kids would love to have any of you stop in to see.
You wouldn't want me in your lab?
You'd be surprised.
My buddies and I decided we'd go to the lab.
Feedback as far as, like I said, my daughter is a freshman and she had some science classes this year and she's done great in them. So just offering some feedback. She was well prepared in the sciences. She had a class with a lab and it was tough, but she did well. So
It's just adjusting. It's adjusting
Yeah.
to that, the rigor of those lab plus a class. That our kids are up to it. We have really bright kids here at MVU. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Did you chat Wendy? I don't know if she doesn't have to stay. She doesn't stay online. She's
Will do that.
Dan, if we jump in on a science class, do we get to participate?
Depends on what's going on. but
How fun would that
We'll
be?
give you some guidance.
All right. Next agenda item is the student service update, tuition and purchased services informational.
Okay.
Now you can roll.
Now I can do it, but
Now
you
you
asked
can
me to
do
do
it.
another thing. Okay. I'm gonna share my screen and hopefully do it correctly. And we have Tanya, I'm gonna introduce it a bit, if that's okay with you, Tanya. We asked Tanya to come in and do a presentation about our students who are tuitioned out of the district. We've been looking at the budgeting for the particular group of students for a number of years and tracking it. It's something that statewide is a growing expense. I think there are a lot of reasons that we can say that students experience struggles in public school settings and need to be educated elsewhere. And it is an area in Vermont, actually, the extraordinary cost students that cost the most, tuition, transportation, expensive programming, that area of Vermont's state budget has doubled in the past year, or 2 years.
2 years.
2 years. So it was $54 million and now it's $100 and something million across the state. So it is not an MVSD issue, it's an everywhere issue, it's a national issue, but we have students who are experiencing challenges. So in the finance committee, they wanted to hear more, particularly at budget time, about is it just the cost of everything going up, or do we have more students, or is it likely both? So I asked Tanya to put together some data so we could look at what the trend is, and I'll kick it to you now.
Thank you. So on this slide, I just started with our child count. So generally, child count is just the number of students who qualify for special education services in the district. And so you can sort of see over time, and I started with 18-19 because that's really when I started tracking that data. So you can see that our child count all by itself has increased. So a few years ago, 313 students district-wide qualified for special ed. We're up to 383. Right? And so percentage-wise, so students who qualify for special ed out of the gen ed, the ADM population, it used to be in 1920, I have that figure that out of the ADM it's about 19%. I think it was about that the year before too. I just didn't have that exact number in front of me when I did the calculation. But that number has stayed the same for a little bit, and now we're up to about 23%. So what that says is right now we're at a point where we have, of all of the students in our district, 23% of them are qualifying for special education. And that's a pretty high number. Generally, we used to think about statewide averages being around 16%, and we've always been right around there, but that's higher now, and we can probably speculate on a lot of different reasons why that might be, right? So COVID falls in there somewhere, and during that COVID year of hybrid, we took a dip, right? Our child count was down, and if I had a guess about that, because we lived it, we weren't evaluating kids that year as frequently. We didn't have them on site to do so. So a lot of those evals were deferred out to the next year. They were, the re-evals were done in a way. We were able to do re-evals in a certain process, but new evals and new referrals might have been either pushed off or not recognized because we weren't here, right? So that those things fell into the next year, and so here we are in 23, 24, and our ADM's
pretty, our child count is looking pretty high.
Do we know anything about statewide, whether that has happened?
I don't know. I don't have that number. Yeah. I think there is some concern and there's conversation, right, about whether or not special ed numbers will increase or decrease with the changes in the rules, because the rules are very different now in terms of how you qualify, but that's yet to be determined, right? We will see how that plays out. But there's some conversation around what everyone's numbers will look like.
That was my quick question, I don't want to interrupt, but,
Yep.
so the rules didn't change 18 to 2023,
No.
24?
Right, so this year we're in the new set of eligibility determination rules, right? So it'll be next year that and this year we'll start to be seeing the rules change, but these are just numbers as they are, nothing has changed here. Yeah.
So, a couple of questions. As you see these numbers, are they growing because we're getting more children earlier? I mean, I'd see 383, but if you look at the grade levels, have the numbers stayed the same or increased at, say, middle school or high school? And that the big increase is the students coming in the lower grades? I don't know. The other question I have is, as the numbers increase, does the severity of the issues increase? Do we have more students with more challenging needs?
So to answer the first question, I don't have the numbers in front of me for elementary versus high school. I can definitely look at that. My sense is that they're generally pretty consistent across the board. It's not that we're doing a earlier identification differently at the lower level. Anecdotally, are the needs higher? I'd say yes, and I think we'll see more of that as we move through and look at some of the behavior kind of mental health triggers that are causing some of the added district numbers to go up. So yes, the severity of some of the more of the behavioral mental health pieces I think are impacting.
I guess my third question would be, then will the new funding model in some ways penalize us?
No, actually, it's benefited us.
It has benefited us?
It has benefited us with the extraordinary cost students, so our highest cost
I've heard
students.
Laura saying additional funding has come in, but as I see the numbers grow, I just wondered if that was going to work to our disadvantage, but anyway, doesn't make a whole lot of difference. If it does, it doesn't, we have to address it.
Well, we're being made almost whole on extraordinary students, where we used to only get about 50%, 55% on the first 60,000, and then 95% after that. We're actually almost whole on those students now.
Well, if you take away those extraordinary students, the student that just receives direct services here at some level, what that money is.
The block grant, it was decreased slightly, but every year it goes up slightly also, based on our ADM. So when this number goes up, that will go up slightly too.
Because that was part of the discussion when we went to this new 127 funding model. What was this interface?
173.
Is it 173?
Yeah.
I forget the
Yeah.
numbers. Whatever it is, how does this interface with the 127?
So if we pop to next slide, oh, we're on it already. So if you look at our out-of-district placements, and this is over time, again, the same years, starting at in 18, 19 at 20 students, about, and I say about because these numbers are never consistent. The number 32 may have changed 6 times since last week, right? I mean, kids are in flux, our numbers are in flux. So it sort of ebbs and flows throughout depending on when we've looked at them, but generally speaking, this would be about the fall sort of snapshot about what we thought we had going into the fall, right? So of each of these years. So about in 18, 19, 20 students out of district placed. And this year, and you can kind of see the numbers have went up, kind of down a little bit, up, and then now we're up to 32. So it's sort of that slow climb, right, up to a pretty high number of 32 students. percentage-wise, if you look at that against the number of students who are qualifying for special ed, it's a slight increase, right? 6%, 7%, 8%. So the percentage of students in out-of-district placements that are eligible for special ed hasn't risen extraordinarily, but it's up, and part of that, right, part of the top number is that we just have a higher number of students eligible now.
So would these be the kids that Laura's saying extraordinarily almost made whole?
Some of them
Some
could be,
of them.
yeah, not all of them, a majority of them.
Most of them, you know, if it's a full year of tuition and transportation, they would hit that extraordinary cost, yes,
And oftentimes, a lot of those students have other things also.
yes.
Wow.
Okay, I think that also gets at the number of kids that are becoming eligible a lot, maybe because behavior is the primary disability, and they may not have been found eligible for special ed in the past.
Right. Okay. So these are just some statistics. I'm not going to read all the words to you because I think you all have access probably, but generally speaking, I just pulled out of some of the literature some different statistics to kind of paint that picture of context about what is happening for kids. Generally, our out-of-district kids are students that we're not able to serve due to behavior and mental health challenges, right? So one statistic sort of at the top of the National Institute of Health from 2019, so right, we're looking at older data, not even post-COVID, but 20% of children and young people ages 3 to 17 in the U.S. have mental, emotional, developmental, or behavioral disorder, and suicidal behaviors among high school students increased more than 40% in that decade before 2019. So the trends, right, and so this is kind of the thinking, the trends around mental health increases, suicidal ideation, anxiety, depression around with youth were increasing pre-COVID, and those are a lot of the numbers that we have access to, and I think we all have sort of heard and read about how COVID has just exacerbated that, right? And so we're experiencing that now. So just kind of taking a look at those statistics, thinking about, you know, recently we had done some work with Behavior Solution Tree around some behavior programming, and some of the statistics they shared with us were that, and this is 2020, 7 out of 10 teens reported struggling with mental health. 43% are struggling with depression. Greater than half of teens report experiencing anxiety. And then more specific Vermont data from 2021, 1 in 6 youth in the U.S. Experience a mental health disorder. 6,000 Vermonters, 12 to 17, have depression, and these are diagnostic statistics. High school students with depression are more than two times more likely to drop out than their peers. And 40% of Vermonters aged 12 to 17 who have depression did not receive any care around that in that last year. And so this was in 2021. So thinking about the number of students or children who need support aren't accessing those, are able to access some of that care. Not school care, but mental health care, right? So I just wanted to kind of pop these up to just sort of help us think about that the mental health that's impacting children in the community and children broadly, right? That is sort of what's creeping into school. They're the same children that we are then trying to figure out how to help in school get an education, right, with these competing needs.
How do they alive? I mean, that just blows my mind. Over 40% of Vermonters, 12 to 17, who have depression did not receive any care in the last year. How do they get that data? If they collect the data, they must know that they have the need.
Right. I mean, I think there's a
And
lot.
nobody did anything about it?
I mean,
It
well,
could be based on
anecdotally,
referrals.
right.
Go ahead.
Could be based on referrals or wait lists. Like we know that many students that need support and are referred out or need counseling, say, are on wait lists for a very, very long time. We wait for students who need to go into residential treatment. We can wait up to a year and a half for that to happen for students. So I think that it's a combination, right, where that number actually
I could see the
came from.
residential, but I'd have to believe if somebody at MVU noted a student was suffering direct depression, they would.
In our
somebody-
school system, I think we would figure out how to manage that right away. But in terms of mental health therapy, right, that's not actually the role of the school, is to
Right.
provide that ongoing therapy. So there's maybe a lag in what they have access to in the community.
It's scary.
Yeah, and sorry not to interrupt, that's one of the things that we heard a lot from parents was that they had problems getting their child in to receive mental health services, and the wait was anywhere between 6 to 9 months to be able to get them in to be seen, and sometimes even just screened. So that was part of the reason why we had asked and looked to hire Melissa Gaudio as one of our counselors here, and she's got the caseload of about 66 students that she sees here at MVU.
Because I know that the mental health budget is not a little one,
No, it isn't.
it's a lot of money.
And that is where that fine line between how do we support students who are struggling with mental health access their education, which is slightly different than thinking about how does a child who has ongoing mental health issues have access to mental health therapy and counseling, right? That's a longer terms. So we struggle with where's that balance, and we want to provide what we can provide. And at the end of the day, we want to support them to get access to education. So one of the things that we talk about a lot when we're thinking about out-of-district placements, and I just threw this in here because these are part of our special ed rules and regulations, whenever we're talking about how to support a child, we are, it's necessary for us legally to think about the least restrictive environment in which the child can get access to their education. And so we go through a lot of scrutiny and a lot of thinking and a lot of putting various plans in place before we can arrive at a place where we're actually saying we need to find an alternate solution, which may be out of the building. And so I just put that in here because I just wanted to also situate the conversation and help us understand that we're following our rules as well, our special education rules, when we make those decisions.
Not done lightly.
Right. Some of the things that go into our decision making, we have comprehensive evaluations for students for special ed, for 504. We often are doing psychological evaluations for these students that we're talking about in particular. We do functional behavioral assessments and behavior plans. We're consulting with our behavior specialists. We provide one-to-one intervention. We might access the special support staff from NCSS to do behavior intervention here, the CAT workers. We often will hold interagency coordination meetings, CSP meetings, and those are in conjunction with our designated mental health agency. So with NCSS, sometimes with DCF, and ourselves, we will try to problem solve to plan for students outside of education, but kind of coordinate in the community with them. We try to provide flexible programming, to keep them in district as much as possible. We sometimes are conducting threat assessments or risk assessments, and we're putting crisis plans in place. So these types of things often happen for most of the students who we end up reaching a point that we can't have them successfully in the building accessing school. All right, next. And so this is a very oversimplified version of kind of what that least restrictive environment continuum looks like, but I just wanted to paint the picture. So when we look at that list of alternative programs, and I'll show you in a second, the next slide, this is kind of how the programs look in terms of least restrictive to more restrictive and how we get to some more intensive programming. And while for a very long time we relied on the SOAR Learning Center to provide alternative programming for our students, for most of our students out of district, and they would maybe fall in that far green column. So smaller class sizes, behavioral support, therapeutic support, a higher staff to student ratio. So maybe 1 teacher, 1 support staff, 10 students, something like that. homeschool communication and increased supervision, so that smaller environment, more controlled. That used to sort of fit for most students that needed something that was other than the gen ed environment. Sometimes, though, students might then need a one-on-one in that environment, or they might need a program that's delivered outside of that classroom in their own setting, even in the alternative program, right? And that's that yellow column. And then beyond that, we sometimes look at programs, well, if that kind of program isn't working, then we're looking at something that's very specialized and very much tailored to the individual needs. So very much focused on their strengths, their interests. It's individually planned, not group planned. It might be one-on-one only. It might be ongoing therapeutic, prioritizing the therapeutic aspect and monitoring for safety and supportive interventions, right? So when we think about the program options we have, we look at what does that child need, how do we support them in the least restrictive environment, and then we kind of build on that. And so it seems like these days, where the majority of our students used to be able to be served primarily in that green column, more and more, given some of their needs, we're needing a way more individualized program. And some of our students then will also need a residential treatment, right, which is further out on the continuum. So these are just a list of some of the alternative programs that we do contract with. And this list, I had taken a look at it, and maybe a few years ago we were working with SOAR Learning Center and maybe
Laraway occasionally.
What's that?
Laraway occasionally.
Laraway, right? So we had maybe 1 or 2 schools. And over time, we've just increased the number of schools that we actually interface with. And right now, for example, this year we are working with, we have a student at, or have had students at these programs in and out throughout the year so far this year. And again, it really depends on the level of need of the child, the level of, right, the availability sometimes. That can be a big barrier for us. Programs are filling up and are full, and so we end up on wait lists. So we're searching to meet the needs of the kids as soon as we can. And so along with this comes increased costs of transportation because they are not close by.
Are any of these affiliated with a public school?
No, these are all independent.
So is
Special ed
Vitality
schools.
something fairly new?
Brightality, yeah, relatively new. They were operating in St. Albans for a handful of years as a tutorial program, and were last year approved as an independent school. And they do still provide some tutorial, but they're now an ALE approved independent school.
Some of them been around a long time.
And right now there's a moratorium on new independent schools, and we had Centerpoint and what was the other school that closed? Mosaic. Closed last year, and they took some of our students as well. So and they work with particular populations of kids. So finding a place for a student with a particular set of needs is getting harder and harder to do.
Did finance kill closing?
I think staffing
Staffing?
and cost, of course, and it's hard to be an independent school. It's a small business, essentially, a nonprofit. It's hard to maintain.
That way was a little old white building, 4 rooms. I'm looking at some.
Okay, next. So the last slide is just kind of where we're at with our ongoing work around this. And it's sort of like this multi-pronged approach, right? We talk about our MTSS. We can't just focus on the tier 3, we can't just focus on tier 1, but we're kind of doing across the buildings all of those things, right? We're working on building the system in the building to be able to be more proactive. We say trauma responsive often because we're trying to create environments that aren't triggering for students who may have increased anxiety or sort of mental health challenges. So we're working on that at a universal level. We're trying to figure out how we do tier 2 intervention for social skills, for our social emotional learning competencies, right? Like we would for academics. We're playing around with how do we do that in a way that's in real time, and that, right? Because those things aren't fast. And then some of the ideas around, are we looking at like at tier 3 alternative classrooms, alternative learning spaces? How do we support those students if they're having a temporary crisis potentially, or if it's going to be more long term? So we're looking at that type of scenario. And then we have lots of conversations. I know at my VCSEA meetings or CVSEA meetings, we talk quite a bit about where everyone's at with alternative programming and meeting the needs of children with more intense mental health and behavior challenges. And I know that Julie's been working with superintendents around that, and we're having a collaborative discussion later this week around that. So there's a lot of more regional conversations happening.
Would there be pushback at the elementary school level, and I'm thinking from parents too, if in a district we had 3, 4, 5 elementary schools that one of the buildings housed an alternative program, would that not be acceptable under the?
Well, I've done that in the past in other districts. I mean, we
yeah.
do have,
I was involved in that.
you know, it's always a challenge to have a student leave elementary school A to access a program in elementary school B without everybody being in agreement about that. At this point, we're looking at building in-house we have an off-campus program, and we have here at MVU, we have sort of an on-campus, hands-on learning that's not strictly alternative, but it is co-taught with a special educator. And we are looking at having a small alternative classroom here at MVU and looking to do that at Swanton as well, because that's where the need is right now. I wouldn't envision building anything really large enough that you would move students from one elementary to another.
I can see here, it's not an issue, because whether you're Franklin or Swanton, you're now an MVU student. But in the elementary school, if you had one student or two, it would be nice to have flexibility. Just curious.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it. That's all I have, unless anyone has questions or.
Just want to see if, Joanne, do you have any questions? And Megan? And Kelly? Is Rennick still with us?
He is.
Yes.
I think, you know, when.
Did you forget about me, Jen?
No,
No,
I said.
I just couldn't see you.
I couldn't see you, so that's why I said, is Rennick still there? I'm just trying to go through everybody's.
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm just trying to go through everybody's.
No, great question.
Go ahead.
I appreciate the information. Thank you. It's great.
You're welcome.
So the answer to the cost drivers are there are more students, there are higher intensity, and the costs are going up for those services. So it's all three things.
But there are our students, so
Absolutely.
While you had those numbers up there, I was turning to the budget pages.
I saw.
Going back to FY23 versus FY24, because I think that's what we had the data for. Total special ed budget, about a 12.5% increase. And quick math on the growth in students is well beyond the 12.5% increase. So it seems like we're absorbing some of that growth with our current staffing, and sounds like we need to, now these alternative programs in-house is kind of the next step to accommodate our extra volume of students. Is that part of it, or is it really focused on bringing some kids back in?
I think that the primary thought is to keep students here that we believe can be educated here if we're able to give them the right environment and not have to send them out. there may be a student or two that's ready to come back, and having a place for them to go is a step. But as Tanya showed you, many of the students we have out have really serious things that they're working through in an environment that can give them treatment as well as education. So it really depends on how well students are able to experience success and whether they're ready to come back. And the story for the past 10 years is that the students, a lot of the waiting lists are because SOAR, for example, can't take some of the students because of the level of need is too high. So then Tanya and others have to work to find a place that will take that. So even our designated mental health agencies that specialize in providing educational environments for high-risk students and students who are having significant challenges will turn away students because they're experiencing acute behaviors. And I'm trying to say this in a positive way, right? But it's the level of need is increasing. And we've built alternative programs for the kids that 10 years ago we used to send to SOAR or Laraway or Baird. And we're trying to, and schools all around us are building alternative programs to meet the needs of those students.
Yeah, and I just want to applaud Christy for starting the middle school program in an effort to try and house a lot of those students here rather than trying to send them other places off locations where the price tag may be higher. So, doing that, getting that in-house program is going to be huge.
And one of the other factors that we have experienced that has a real impact is that our continuum used to include school-based behavior clinicians, which it still does in most schools, but we used to be able to count on those positions, right? Those people from NCSS who would carry a caseload of 10 students. We had an autism interventionist a few years ago that carried a caseload of 10 students in our building at Swanton. And then that person left, and it was person specific, and NCSS couldn't fill that position for a year and a half. So 10 students, right? All of a sudden that were supported by a high level of expertise in a building are now being supported in that same building, but then the resources that were allocated differently are poured into supporting those students. So it's really a juggle. We often contract with NCSS for our CAT workers, individualized behavior support folks, and when NCSS can't hire for that, and that has impacted MVU quite a bit this year, right? We find out at the beginning of the school year we don't have the staff. Then we're sort of trying to put our pieces together. So then it becomes this, oh my goodness, we thought we were going to be able to have them in-house, but that is a high level of support and we don't have that support. So now what do we do, right? So that they're successful, so that we are using our resources widely. Sometimes those students need to be in an alternative placement. So it's really, it can create a hole in our continuum when that happens and we're reliant on another agency for those services.
I know NCSS has 80 vacancies, and many of those vacancies are in outpatient clinicians. So that gets to the lack of therapy and treatment outside of school as well.
Are we able to find enough highly qualified staff to serve our students? Because I read reports at those school districts, it seems that people have a very difficult time filling some of their positions. And I know Julie's reported at times, but are we in fair shape now, needing more, or are we in good shape when it comes to that? Because I know.
I feel like we have our positions filled. It's just sometimes it's a matter of how we're supporting some of the newer folks, right? What resource goes into that support.
SLPs though.
SLPs, right? SLPs.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
So it's a never-ending challenge to get staff.
thank you very much
Thank
for the
you.
information,
Thanks for
really appreciate
letting
it.
me have some
Very
here.
good, thank you.
You don't have to stay for the budget if you don't want to. So moving right along, we've got FYI 25 budget, possible action, draft 5, capital projects priorities.
I think this is our opportunity to sort of go line by line through the budget. We'll try to be as efficient yet effective as I can. Julie, do you mind actually sharing so I can?
You don't want to read and share at the same time?
Yeah,
What is it you would like me
it's
to?
the budget draft that's linked in there, budget
Okay.
draft 5, yeah.
I will do that.
Actually, yeah, go ahead and do that, and I'll just, the budget workbook, if you go to slide 15, so your, the board budget workbook has a link to draft 5, but draft 5 came in at $53,222,437. It's an increase of just over 8 million or 18%. Just a few notes, we have now in this draft increased the after-school programming local share to the scenario 3 that was presented by Beth Ann at the last meeting. So that local support has gone from about 204,000 to a little over 343,000. On the tax rate or the revenue side, I will obviously be increasing the Medicaid revenue to offset that. There was an increase of 584,000 or just a little bit more than that to the capital project line or the Fund 3007 to accommodate the proposals that the facility task force brought, kind of the round 1 proposals at the 12-19 meeting also. And then on top of that, there's another approximately 3.9 million added to the capital project line. Those priorities will be talked about in a few minutes. But basically, priorities from the capital improvement plan that the facility will be chatting about. And then also, there were some increases to the technology instructional and technology administration lines, primarily in software. The software supports student staff, and there's also some administrative technology resources. Some of that is inflation, but some of that also is just getting a good inventory and really looking at historicals, working with Derek. Derek spent a ton of time working with his team and really evaluating all of the softwares that we have, when we buy them, when the contracts end, what we can go without, what we need to keep, and then the funding sources for those. So those lines have increased, but we'll be monitoring those throughout the year also to make sure that we're being as efficient as we can.
Well, when you asked if we want to go line by line, did you hear the answer?
I was told I had to.
I suggest we look at instructional programs by program, by fund, and if people don't have questions, we move on. I mean, if you want to go by line, but I didn't hear people going, oh, yeah. So,
I've been trying not to do that for like the last week, but I do have some highlights. I can try to hit.
I would suggest you do that unless people are opposed to it.
And Megan has raised her hand, sorry.
Oh, I can't see her on the
I know.
thing, sorry about that. Go ahead, Megan, sorry, I can't see you when Julie has a presentation up.
No, it's fine, I just raised it.
Okay.
I'm going to try to pull up the draft. It's saying that it's in your trash.
Yes, I noticed that as well. So is this a previous draft that's linked?
No, I thought I fixed the link. Sorry about that. Hold on 1 second.
I'm glad it's not just me, Megan.
Well, I'm in it right now, so how can it be in the trash? Oh, it does say file is in the trash. How do I take it out of the trash, Rusty? You know. Hold on.
Nobody.
If you
trash.
go into, it's in the 1.9 folder though, and it's not in the trash because it's right there. So let me try to link it again.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing.
I'm not sure why.
I got it when I went directly from the
It
shared
did work?
folder.
Okay, sorry about that. Yep, let me. So it was in the workbook that the link was no good, or the other one?
The one on the board agenda?
On the board agenda, okay, thanks. Okay, should be good now, hopefully. Not sure why that happened.
Oh, and I'm gonna agree with Dawn's suggestion of going section by section and
Thank
with
you.
your highlights, and if anybody has any questions.
Thank
Line
you.
by line, I call it at midnight.
Yep.
The problem with with me projecting this is
Can't really
It's
see.
you
squishy.
can't see it and
Yeah,
the resolution gets worse.
I think on your own device, you should be able to see it, so, and again, people have questions, we can kind of drill down into specific lines, but, just to kind of give an overarching kind of, structure, this, obviously this budget includes prior years, so as we know, it's including the budgets from the 2 prior years, fiscal year 23 and 24, as well as what was expended in 23 and then what's anticipated in 24. The anticipated columns is for salaries and benefits encumbering all of that, or what we are anticipating today as it stands. But then obviously some supply lines and equipment lines, there's still yet to be purchasing or known purchases, so some of those lines are kind of to be determined. But for the most part, we are really trying to focus on anticipating that as much as possible. As far as the structure, we've gone through this before, but just kind of a quick overview. We organize this by funds, and so we start with the school-based fund and then we go from there, but that's sort of the highest level. Within that, we then go to a function, which is kind of the activity for which the purchase is being made. It's on the first page, you'll see instructional programs 1101, and then we focus on the object. But within every fund, there's a bunch of functions. Within the functions, there's the same set primarily of object codes. They start with the 100s and they go all the way to 800s. And I can kind of explain those as we go. As far as this basically, so while there are different funds, we call them different funds, this is all the general funds. This is all what encompasses what taxpayers pay on, or what is our expenditure budget that we calculate the tax rate on minus revenues. As far as the funds, I just want to sort of highlight the largest funds. So obviously the first one that you're seeing, the school-based, the 1001, is our largest. It comes in about 29 million. That is what it costs to educate the general population of the school. So it's all the classroom teachers and those supplies and those sorts of, the guidance counselors and the nurses, but it's sort of the general population. So again, about 29 million. Special ed would be next after that. That's the 1125 fund. That comes in about $10 million. Under that was now the capital project line. So that's fund 3007. It comes in about 6.1 million. So you can see these are pretty large buckets out of the 53 million. Central office is about 3.7 million. That is a majority of our administration, not just the people that we house in our office. And then ECP, or the Early Childhood Program, comes in at about 1.7. So those are just some big buckets that you can kind of identify throughout the budget.
Laura, just to know that general administration included people not working in central office?
Well, not necessarily in our office all the time. Sometimes people think the central office budget means just the people that they see when they walk in, but that includes our curriculum, and sometimes they are maybe housed there, but it's also the curriculum coordinators and the ECP coordinators and all of that. Yeah, Tanya that you see tonight.
Beth Ann? No.
Not Beth Ann, nope, she would be under the 1624, towards the end of the budget. You've heard me say this before also, that we do follow a very strict uniform chart of accounts when we budget. We have, again, really focused on standardizing and streamlining and being consistent after the merger. So if you're seeing things across the columns that don't maybe line up, or you have questions about why 2 years ago there was expenditures there, but now there's zero, the chances are that we have reallocated that and we've kind of streamlined the way that we're charging items. There are some really large ones that you might see. Technology, for instance, all technology now runs through either a 2230 or a 2580 function. Everywhere in the budget, it allows us to track softwares and those expenses, which were all over before. They were in classroom and department budgets, and it was just impossible to have an accurate inventory. So now those all flow through our technology department. Internet and phone is now under communications everywhere under the principal's office line. Advertising is all in one place. PD is always under a 2213. Some of the big district costs, like HRA benefit costs, which is a few $100,000, workers' comp, those are now all under the central office fund, or the 110 fund. So that should help all of us kind of be able to manage and understand the budget better and track expenses. So I just want to draw attention to that. You'll see some big columns that have zeros in them, and it's just us moving them. We tried to make notes where we could. Other than that, I'll jump into just kind of the big highlights. Under instructional programs, obviously the biggest thing that we're seeing in the increases in this budget, other than the capital investments, are the negotiated increases for our teaching staff, along with those 16.7% benefit increases. We'll see those in the 100 and 200 object codes. And then other than that, we will see the lines that I guess Tanya was just sort of discussing, but the student services lines and the tuition lines, which are under 400s and 500s, have increased significantly, both under gen ed and special ed, and also under transportation. So you can see on the first page, instructional programs, I mean, that's $15 million right there, just under the 101, just instruction. So that's like classroom instruction, what it costs in our schools, in our classrooms, is just over $15 million. I'm sorry, that also includes the tuition, but other than that, about $15 million.
Are you able to talk about any of the staffing changes in this?
I can, yep. So there are a few additional positions that we've talked about in previous drafts, but we do have an additional social studies teacher and a business teacher for MVU. We have the 2 alternative classroom, or we have professional holding spots for 2 alternative classrooms, one at MVU and one in Swanton, sort of to be determined. Other than that, in instructional, there's nothing that's been added. There may be some adjustments, but nothing that's been added. Also, all the column movements that we know, so teachers that have applied to move from, a master's step 15 over to a master's 30, or retirements that are known right now, those are also in here. We also, oftentimes people ask about department budgets that we collect from MVU. That process has happened. It's flowed through Dan and Christy, and then those are reflected in here through supplies and equipment and those sorts of things. So those are part of this 1001 school-based fund under the instructional programs
So in addition to
category.
we said social studies teacher, MVU, and alternative program, what was the other one?
Business.
Did we cut business a few years ago?
A few years ago, someone went down to half-time, and we were unable to replace, after her retirement, a half-time position, and we have needs for full-time
That's good.
enrollment, so,
Because I'm glad to hear that's coming back.
yes. I mean, we have 2 other business teachers?
Yeah, we currently have 2 full-time, looking to replace.
The half-time.
Yep, 2 full-time. There's a need for it.
Student numbers are good.
Between the career explorations and
Great.
personal finances, yeah.
That's good.
I mean, other than that, there's not a lot that's changed. We're monitoring lines under instruction, but if you're looking for things like school-based clinicians that Tanya was talking about, you'll find that under guidance services or a 2120. So given there's usually notes there, we do have 1 in Highgate, 1 in Swan, and 2 at MVU providing services that add up to about $181,000. As I said, on page 3 under 2213 professional development, all professional development is now charged under those codes. So if you're looking for what we invest in our staff as far as professional learning, you'll find it under those categories.
That's gone down a few years ago. What's causing that?
Well, since the pandemic, we merged and then we had the pandemic, and so a lot of people were not taking advantage of necessarily professional development, so I'm still looking for that baseline, but I felt comfortable dropping some of these lines as sort of
So it's not a change in what we've offered to our
No, we've actually offered more in our master agreements, yeah. I can see those lines, now that we're moving away from the pandemic, probably starting to creep back up, but I think we'll be fine for next year. Mentoring services just beneath that, 2219, that's something I think we've really cleaned up. Bonnie has worked with Kosha and some of the other staff, but we've now kind of set up a very clear standard $750 for mentoring, and that's a 2-year requirement for any of our new teachers. And there's a very clear understanding now about what those duties are, and that was already happening, but we've cleaned that up and everybody understands that now, so we were really happy about that. Something people also tend to look for, there are questions that have come up in the past, I should say, on page 4 under the 2410 or the principal's office. That's where you'll find department leaders. I know sometimes that might be a little tricky that we put them there, but that's where we code them. They earn anything between $3,700 and $4,800 a piece. So
Which line?
under 151, it'll say wages high school department leaders.
Okay, yeah.
So that's just the stipend, is not their full
Just the
salary.
stipend, yeah, that they receive for that duty, yeah.
The lady who was here tonight, is she a department head?
Janet,
Janet.
yes.
Yeah.
Did she replace Mr. Daly?
She did.
He's still there?
Nope.
He retired?
Yeah. He's doing a long-term sub job right now
Oh,
for
okay.
us.
All right.
Or he did. He just got done with that last week. He covered paternity leave for us.
That's great when somebody like that is willing to come back and
Yeah,
do that.
absolutely.
We count on people to come back and do long-term stuff.
Mhm.
If you
It's
see,
fun to be involved, it's like being an interim superintendent. Hey, you know, you're in there, you get paid, and you walk out, you don't have to come back tomorrow if you don't want to.
and just a little note on technology, if you see instructional technology, that means it's instruction for students. If you see administrative technology, that's things that we use to operate our business, right? So that's like Power School and what is the new thing that we canceled school with?
Bright Arrow.
Bright Arrow. It doesn't seem like that should be it, but that's where you find administrative technology. Under plant, so still on page 4, 2610, that's where the 2 new positions that were proposed for facilities are. Under 172, the wages of support, you'll see it over there in the note, so that we have the one MVSD-wide position that we're proposing for facilities, and then also the grounds position for MPO.
So if you look at 2610-151, we budgeted 203 and we're only going to spend 158.
Well, we had a change in the structure, remember?
Okay, so where's the other salary?
So we had Jason, we used to have a separate facility director in Highgate. Jason is now split between the 3 schools, so there was some savings there.
Okay. But that doesn't seem like very much money just for building and grounds directors. How many people are we calling?
Just 2,
2? Jason and,
Stephen Reynolds.
okay. All right. I was like, did we send somebody home?
And then overall, under plant operations, we are up about $441,000. Some of that is additional investments in the purchase services. So we know that water and sewer is costing more, rubbish removal is costing more, snow plowing continues to go up, but so does anything related to facilities basically. So supplies, materials, furniture, shipping and handling for all of those things. So we have increased some of those lines. For instance, the purchase, repair, and maintenance, we've increased about $130,000, and I think that's been a goal over the last few years and something we've been trying to do.
How much longer do we have for the snowplow contract?
This is the end, I think.
It seems like a while since we.
Yeah. Well, we finally had them all on one cycle, which was helpful.
Yes.
Underneath that, we have the 2711. People are oftentimes asking how much we spend on transportation. So the last thing on the list there, the 519 code is to and from school only. Those are our large contracts with Terracel, Transit, and MNC. And then the others above it are for out-of-district placements and field trips and extracurricular kind of activities. But overall, we spend about $2.1 million just in gen ed transportation. This is not special ed transportation.
I find it curious that we budgeted $57,000 for snow plowing, and we've anticipated 65, and we haven't had any snow plowing except once.
It's a contract.
Yeah, but what, okay, so after we budgeted, the contracts were negotiated, increased? You following that?
I am. I'd have to go back and look at when the date we signed the contracts, when we were budgeting. Don't forget, when we were budgeting for 24, that was way before fiscal year 24 starts. So I'd have to go back and look to see what the
But
contracts
it's just follow from snow plowing from 53, and then it's just,
53.
it's not a big amount, but if you follow in line, it
We're
didn't
going
make
from
sense to me.
57 to 57 to 63.
And 57 we put in, and it was 65. Okay, all right.
We do have some fuel surcharges on some of them also, and we also have some extra charges when they need to move snow, but right now, we probably have a holding spot of a PO in there encumbered for 65, maybe that might be some snow removal and fuel on top of it, and then we'll reduce it if that doesn't come to fruition, so that could come down a little bit.
Okay, no,
Yeah. But again, like natural gas, for instance, we've increased that a little bit, and that's about $40,000, and that's just based on inflation. Below that, just a little note, on where you see summer services, that's a prime example, where you see there's $46,000 in column 1, and then there's nothing. We still have summer services, we're just not identifying them in this code, they're just under tutoring or, other places, the summer program through the after-school program. Food service support under the 3,100 is just Franklin, that's the in-house program that we have, this offsets their benefit costs. Interscholastic always seems to be something that people like us to highlight. The athletic trainer is in there as far as an employee position now. It's been kind of back and forth. We were budgeting for it. It was in ESSER. We were doing a contracted service because we couldn't find one. It's now budgeted for an employee again, which I think we have, correct? Do we have one?
Not a full-time one.
Not a
We
full-time
have
one.
somebody that we're contracting with.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
2 now, actually.
2 now. Oh, 2 people are doing that.
Yes.
Okay, I think Bonnie might have mentioned that. But that was something that was funded with ESSER, we were offsetting that with ESSER revenue, but the cost has always been in the budget, one way or another. Another note there, as far as referee services under 348, we now contract with an institution called Arbiter Sports, which I think I've brought to you, but they pay all of our referees, and we simply pay them as a contracted service. There were some bumps in the road when we first started, but I think we've got them smoothed out, and it seems to be working quite well. We also will see some savings there because just today, Anne Marie in my office will be working on 1099s, and there's about 50 less that she has to do that we have to issue because Arbiter Sports will be issuing them.
So, they cover all sports?
All of our sports at the middle school and high school level. I don't know if anybody has any questions about the interscholastics lines. I do have to check on a couple things. I want to check on dues and fees as far as the anticipated, and yeah, dues and fees down. I have to verify those numbers to see what's going on there. Those might just be encumbered POs that may be tapered down as the school year goes, or what's going on, because they don't seem
Where would
right in line with me.
Field repairs and stuff like that go?
So some is under the 431 line, so it's on the bottom of page 5. Purchase, repairs, and maintenance of 431, you'll see there's about 17.5, but we are really trying to identify what is, that's really just like lining the fields, very specific to athletics. Jason and the facilities budget are now taking on a majority of those other things, like, reseeding and the seed for that and those types of things, and there was some overlap there in previous years.
But we were increasing it quite a bit for just, it's not really field maintenance.
Well, it is field maintenance, it's just not the seeds and everything like that. So those costs were all over, some were in some of those costs, like,
Oh, we've been
seed
spending that in the past, we just
Right.
weren't budgeting for it.
and seed, for instance, there was some discrepancy. Like John would maybe put the seed under a supply, under interscholastics, but under facilities, we put it under something else, so we've cleaned that up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Co-curriculars, 1501, so that's beginning of page 6, that is, obviously our advisors. So sometimes people are unfamiliar with where that is, so those are our advisors for National Honor Society and the musical or student council and yearbook. There's, I don't even know how many, but a lot. Yeah.
25, 30.
Yeah. And then we get to central office fund. So we have, again, curriculum, we have professional development, we have technology services or technology administration. That is where the board's stipends fall under the 2311s on page 7. The treasurer, we have our audit services at $47,000. We'll be going out to bid again soon for that.
Are we increasing, board secretary, is that pure right now?
Yes, it's the person that takes the minutes, yes, so that's some funding for that also.
So we're increasing
Our meetings are too long. Our meetings are too long. Well, no, we actually have more minutes, so
Do we pay by the hour?
we do.
Okay.
And now we're having the minutes taken at the committees as well, so there's more time, yeah.
That's fine. When Richard Flint was here, he wanted to pay us $4,000, $40,000. Remember Richard at that meeting?
I remember that meeting.
He said
Where is it?
And Peter Magnan stood up and said, "Are you crazy?" He wasn't a school board member then.
I remember that meeting well.
Also, we oftentimes get asked how much the VSBA dues are. They were $9,634 this year, and that is under the 2311 Board of Education line as well, under dues and fees 813.
More and more people are using the podcasts and the various video type things. Generally, just talking with the SBA, more and more people are clicking into those things.
Just a note on fiscal services also, it does say 1.6 FTE. I missed updating the note, so the first line, 141, that's only one FTE. The next line is actually 2 FTEs, and the next one is 2 as well, so I will update those in the next draft. Moving along, page 8, under fiscal services, I just want to draw attention to the 835 line. That's the short-term borrowing. So that is you'll notice a significant increase to the cost there for interest, but we are also earning at a much higher rate. So we are still creating revenue. We are still gaining from that transaction and reinvestment of our tax anticipation loan. But when you look at this line alone, it's a little scary, but there's revenue on the revenue side. Under 2580 on page 8, there's also the tech support, so that's Philip in our office who is supporting technology in all of our schools, or tech support in all of our schools. That was an ESSER funded position also, that's the 171 line, but that we had budgeted for that already also. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I misspoke, we did not budget for that, so that technically is an add to the general fund. Page 9, under 2590, that's where I had said we had consolidated a lot of those district-wide expenses. We did check with the auditor on this. We wanted to make sure that it was okay not to have things like the HRA benefit follow the positions, but they said a lot of districts were doing this because it's difficult to manage. They operate on a calendar year, we operate on a fiscal year, we have run-out periods, it's a nightmare. You'll see things like the district-wide HRA costs, that's just our cost as the employer. Unemployment is now there, the unemployment insurance. Workers' compensation for everyone, that's the $263,000.
Is there any benefit to having that follow our special ed folks? Or?
Not anymore, and that's what I was waiting for. Yeah, we don't receive that, unless we were charging it specific to students, which we would never do per hour, per time sample, no. So now that we're not getting just the reimbursement, we're getting the block grant, it was kind of the time to do it. It was something our staff within our office were spending a lot of time on. We still are because we have to reconcile so frequently and it's just so fluid, but this has helped. Also, under the 298, you'll see that the new Act 173 child care tax. So this is our estimate, the $101,613. It's yet to be known if we will be bearing the full burden of that, but I have a feeling that's how it will end up because we would have to negotiate something different. So, but that cost is yet to be seen because it is a payroll tax, so it's based on wages. And I guess the last thing I would say about central office is the 2680 line under the 441. That's where you'll see the rent for central office. That lease expires January of 26. End of January of 26, so we'll have to start thinking about that and discussing that also.
Everything's going well with the new landlord.
It is going well with the new landlord. Yeah, they've been very responsive. They are investing in a camera system, and they've agreed to have a camera on the outside of our building as well, which I think is really important because we're sometimes there at night or early in the morning alone, and so that's not great. And additional lighting. I think that was brought up at a facility meeting. I did follow up with them. They are putting more lighting outside. And then we get into special ed. So as we know, overall, the special ed costs under Fund 1125 are up about $1 million. That's based on this estimate is based on the special ed plan that we did a couple months ago, so obviously that's our best guess at that point in time. And based on the new Act 173 kind of standards. But again, we know the child count is now up to 383, so that's about that's 23% of our population, as Tanya said. So I think those are important to understand. As we work our way through special ed under tutors, which is just in that first part under 193, we were offsetting some of that tutoring cost with ESSER. We will continue to do that till the expiration of the ESSER dollars. We do have some additional funds in there to utilize throughout this summer and maybe the beginning of next school year, but after that, the full burden will be back to the general fund. So that all of this is, I moved it down to ESSER, so the money is there. It's just we've reallocated it back up to special ed now.
So we've talked about the 2 additional positions for alternative program. Are there any other
Under
FTE
special ed.
changes under this one? Another big one?
New positions, I don't believe so. The big increases are under the contracted services lines, yeah. So to meet student needs. And then on page 10, 21, 51 under speech, we have some contracted services. As we know, we are working with Enuma, so you'll see that under not only special ed, but ECP special ed as well, the contracted service for the speech services. A majority, I think, is actually under ECP special ed. Some of these costs also are offset with IDIA revenue, so those are later on in the bottom of the budget. So we offset psychological services, OT, or occupational therapy and physical therapy. We offset with IDIA. So you'll see those categories here, but it'll say IDIA, and those are further down in the budget.
Just to go back for 1 second, I think I missed it. Julie, is it okay to ask, for Central, do we have any contracts that we're renewing this year?
What kind of contracts?
For employee contracts and stuff. Is that okay to ask?
So
Or is that all budgeted?
all of our support staff and professional employees are, if they're going to be renewed, that happens in the spring. But I have the feeling that's not what you mean.
No, I meant Central, because we were on Central office before. So I was just wondering if you factored that in.
Oh, yes.
Increases?
Right.
Yes,
There's a
I think-
placeholder.
I think I use 3% every year. Not that we get 3%, but unless somebody tells me something different as a placeholder and a starting point and to encumber some funds, that's what we use as sort of a standard across non-union.
Okay, I'm talking about the non-union ones. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, those are the non-union as sort of a placeholder. And then they get actually allocated and decided later on.
I've always wondered whether we budget money and then set salaries, or set salaries and then budget money. For the union contracts and stuff like that, it's pretty easy. I've done my little annual survey and I'll tell you the results at some point in time.
Well, I can say outside of our office and maybe a little bit within our office, I know Julie and I, when we meet with building principals, sometimes some of the conversation will be that, someone's duties change slightly, and so maybe a 4% might be appropriate, or we do have those conversations, but those decisions are not made necessarily while we're budgeting, they're made much later on. So special ed, I'm trying to think, positions, but there really aren't any, it's mostly services, definitely. Actually on page 11, I will say under 2212, so curriculum and instruction, the adaptive curriculum coordinator position, there's a retirement happening at the end of this year, and we'll be repurposing those funds, sort of restructuring and reevaluating how that function will happen moving forward.
Which department?
Adaptive curriculum.
Special ed coach.
Oh, okay, so it's under cautious.
It's been under special ed administration through, I believe, IDEAB for partially for many years.
Yep.
And there's a retirement there, and we will redistribute those positions. We have more special ed leadership in the buildings now, so I think we'll be able to accommodate those responsibilities differently. than with a position.
So overall, yes, special ed costs are up, but we have an explanation as to why. And obviously, transportation is at the bottom there, so the last thing you'll see under the Fund 1125 is the transportation costs associated with all the things we've been talking about. ECP, there really isn't any changes other than I'll draw your attention to under 1101562, that's where the Act 166 tuition amount is, so the 10 hours of, the cost for the 10 hours of required preschool, it's up, we're anticipating about $194,000. That's about 50 students for next year. I don't have much else to say about ECP either. Page 14 is where the after-school program and the local share of the after-school program is, and so that's that scenario 3 that I mentioned in the budget notes. That's I've sort of I've had to guess about exactly or sort of work through Beth Ann's numbers and sort of allocate those increases. I sort of spread it out percentage-wise through salaries and transportation and supplies, but those will sort of they'll be a little bit fluid until we have the budget finalized.
With the grant approval.
Right.
I'm not remembering this piece of it. Was that gonna expand the number of days per week in Swanton that kids could sign up for, or was that still to keep it at 2?
Not to the degree, I think slightly, but not as in 4 days a week, because we have a cap on how many students we can serve within the building with the staff that we have, right? But we've sort of built in some increase there to hopefully either maintain and increase how many staff we have.
What about their salaries? What are they want to do? We should look at their salaries.
That's with the increases that she was hoping for, or at least money for that. Yeah.
Good.
Exactly what happens will be.
So did we decide at the last meeting, scenario 3?
That's.
I think the straw poll was that's what we wanted in the budget. We still have the chance to change it as part of the budget process.
Right. Until the budget's adopted, you can make any changes.
I did ask that question, Toby, before I put the draft.
I don't think it was clear.
It wasn't a motion.
For the record, I am not in favor of expanding the after-school program. I would prefer scenario 2. So that's what I'd have to say about that.
So as far as direction to administration around the will of the board, do we want to hear from folks about that?
Was that just for the after school, or was that sort of a continuation of what we talked about last time with the different scenarios based on Act 127?
No, that was the after-school scenario. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, this was just based on Beth Ann's presentation. She had kind of outlined in that chart, sort of.
December 19th?
Yeah, the 19th, yeah. And
I am in favor of scenario 2.
Sure.
That's what
And so, Megan, you asked about how it relates to Act 127, and I think in the budget we should put it in that context because the difference between scenario 2 and scenario 3 relative to the total budget size is very small.
Oh, yeah.
And doesn't move our tax rate. We're still up in that, past the cap. And so I guess I'm curious, Toby, is it a budgetary objection or is it a different objection?
it's a $1 million program. I've got the scenarios 3. Scenario 3 is over $1 million program, which I think.
Well, total.
Right. Not considering the offsets, and I think we're just years down the road. I've seen this. We can't get off of it. And I think it's extra. I think it's outside of what we really need to give kids between 7:30 and 2:30 p.m. during the school year. So I just think that I don't like the idea of expanding the app. So it's more of a philosophical concern. Well, not really even a concern. It's just it's not something that I would like to see expand in a school budget.
The amount of money is, you have it right there, but it's pretty insignificant, right between 2 and 3.
I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, you don't have it right in front of
It
you? Right
is
there? Oh, okay.
between scenario 2, the local share is 262,762
Okay.
that we use Medicaid for, and the local share in scenario 3 was 343,500. It's a 3% increase. Is that correct? Am I doing 2.5% between scenario 2 and scenario 3?
No, she's saying it's 45% funded, 21C, 30% local, and 25% other.
Okay.
That's breaking the
About
funding down.
$80,000.
About $80,000.
Okay. All right.
Well, let's get everybody's.
Just
No, I-
so
Well,
find
let's,
another
no,
vote
I'd
in
rather,
favor of it. I
let's
just
do
wanted to-
opinions now before the
just
next,
wanted-
Right.
the next draft 6 at the next meeting,
That'll
so.
be the final one.
Well, yeah, okay. It's creeping up way too fast, okay. All right, so Toby, scenario 2, Devin, 3, Peter?
So what's the difference between 2 and 3? Is a full-time summer program?
So that includes cost of living adjustments and full-day summer programming, as opposed to going back to half-day programming in the summer and minimal funding increase.
And transportation also.
And transportation.
The slides do a pretty good job of showing the difference between the two scenarios.
Yeah.
It's basically the raises we're going to
And to your point, Devin, there actually is 0 impact to the tax rate because it was offsetting Medicaid. If that's
So-
that's what I've done, because that's what we've always done. You could tell me not to do that.
I know, yeah, this kind of, the cap is a special case, so if there's no cap, you're saying this is still, the local share is funded by, has historically been funded by Medicaid.
Yes, and we have a surplus, so we
continue.
could increase that. Rennick raised his hand.
Hey Jen, I thought we had already agreed on the direction that we were going with this. I didn't understand. Are we now redeciding this right now, or have we already not given a direction?
I don't remember it.
We did go around and we didn't have a motion, which is not what we're doing now, because we
Right.
don't make a motion on one thing in a budget.
Right.
But you went around and asked the members present, and I think the only dissenting voice was Toby's that time. And so when Laura and I were discussing that, we felt comfortable that that was the will of the board for that line item.
That's what that's.
Okay. Well, I'll give my opinion on it. We're going for a close to a 9.9 increase, and for that, potential 90,000 that we're talking about, I think it makes a difference to show that we are trying to do some additional things with after school. There's a lot of community members that depend on it, and I think if we were shooting for more spending and yet keeping a program that's quite visible like that the same, I don't think I would side with that. So I'm leaning towards scenario 3, and I don't, that's to me what makes sense right now given the direction that we're overall going with the budget. So that's just my opinion.
You decided? one way or the other, you're still pondering?
I've been pondering, but
Thank you,
I'm leaning towards 3 just because I like the idea of the busing. It gives kids that may not otherwise be able to participate the ability
I think that's
to
right.
participate in the after-school program.
The reason I'm for number 3 was the issue that I brought up in the very beginning of the whole thing, is we shouldn't have different classes of employees, we're getting different wages. I think it sends a bad message to the people on the after-school program that you're making less than a paraeducator. And I'm not saying we're gonna get there, but I think we need to close the gap. And I think Peter's reason is as good as mine, and I might have focused on that. But mine was to say to these people, you're providing a very important service, and you shouldn't be underpaid with our district. So,
That's one of the tricky things with the grant, it's a 5-year grant, and so you set the budget now, as we heard from Beth Ann, and then there's not a lot of room for adjusting, so it's hard. You don't know what's gonna be, what the scenario, environment's gonna be in 5 years, so it's tricky.
Joanne?
I also support scenario 3.
Thank you.
If you need a comment, I can give you one, but just.
Megan?
Yep, I support 3 as well, but I do have a question to follow up to our last meeting regarding the recommendation from the finance committee on the overall budget, and especially with Laura saying the next one is the final, and that's, like, we had a big discussion about it last time, and I guess the closure was finance committee is meeting, they're going to make a recommendation. Did I miss that recommendation? Was it at the beginning
No, you
before I
didn't.
know I was late?
You didn't miss it, because I had the same question too. We had gotten the recommendation.
Probably should have
I was waiting for the recommendation from the finance committee as well, so
Kinda gonna lead into
I
that,
wanted to
so.
hear that. So, yeah, we haven't heard it yet. We're on the same page.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Kelly?
Yeah, I'm still between 2 and 3, I think, but attending that finance committee meeting last time was really, really helpful in answering a lot of those questions. And everything that was brought forward certainly makes sense for scenario 3. I'm glad that I was able to attend that, because that certainly answered a lot of my questions. So I think if I had to lean it in a direction, I would probably also be leaning toward scenario 3. But yeah, I would be really interested to hear the recommendation from the finance committee as well.
Thank you. And I know I was for 3 last time, and I still stand with 3.
You wanna jump to finance, or finish running through this and then,
Well, we're almost through this. Let's since we're on a roll, let's finish this and then get the recommendation from the finance committee.
I don't have a lot to say. I think we were on page 15, we got to the grant section, and so this is just IDEA B. As we know, IDEA B offsets, there's a pre-K portion and a school-wide portion. It offsets psych, OT, and PT costs. So that's basically page 15 and 16. We traditionally have used those funds exactly the same way. There's not a lot of change there. Page 16, about halfway through, we get to the title funding. So as we know, this looks a little funny, and so I will explain this a little bit. We've moved away from primarily utilizing this for salaries, because we know that the healthcare assessments for Visters were over $200,000 with the new assessments that the federal funded positions were going to require. And so this budget now reflects and the tax rate reflects the amount of the grant and offsetting revenue on the revenue side, with the understanding that we will be, once again this year, after we get our allocation and then work through our poverty rates, and then that discovers a target and ranking throughout our schools and tells us how much we need to spend on each school, or if we can pool it together and be school-wide. And so we will be doing that and utilizing those funds for lots of different things. some staff because we have to use some of it for staff, but we'll try to keep that at a minimum. We'll also probably use it to offset some of the new literacy curriculum costs. That's what we're sort of talking about. Exordium, so the STEM, I'm not sure what he calls this program, Kirk,
Yes.
yeah, it's STEM, right? It's outdoor learning?
Yes.
Okay. So we currently are using title dollars to offset that, and so we'll probably continue with that. We tend to use some of these funds for professional development. There are some softwares that we'll continue funding, and then we're also talking about some college or post-secondary kind of readiness support. So this budget, while the dollars will remain the same, where we expend the money will be changing based on how we, what we get allocated and how we are budgeting. Not new expenses, but just what we're using the grant for. That applies basically all the way through title funding. So, but we know that Title II is used to offset COSHA or our curriculum director's salary as well. And then we get to ESSER, and you'll see page 18 and page 19 are all zeros as far as proposed for 25. Those have either been reallocated, removed, discontinued, or absorbed with some kind of adjustment made to absorb those costs. Which means the next draft, for the next year, it'll be shorter. Same thing with ARP IDIA on page 19. And then we finally get down to Medicaid, and this is not the after-school program portion of Medicaid. This is simply the Medicaid clerk on page 20 that we offset a portion of the Medicaid clerk's salary with that grant. And then we get to Fund 3007, or the Capital or Construction and Renovation Fund, which we have now increased another about $4 million, and so total increase is about $4.5 million based on the proposals from the Finance and Facility Committee,
Well, before we go there, I must have been sleepy, but I have a curious question on page 13. Union staff professional development, $2,000.
That's only a small portion. It's just for the union staff under that fund.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I looked at that and I'm thinking, what was that? Okay.
Yeah, just under that fund, a very small amount. They're all under 2213, but under each fund.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you very much. All right, so now I'll go back with you.
Sure. So the only thing after construction is long-term debt, so that's Fund 4001. Those are the bond payments, principal and interest on the two bonds that we have existing, one in Highgate and one in MVU. That totals about $375,000.
What's the MVU?
MVU is the principal payment changes slightly every year. I'm sorry, yeah, the principal doesn't, but the interest does. Principal is 145 and the interest is about 74.
What's the long-term debt for?
Oh, it's the bonds, the municipal bonds for MVU and Highgate. So Highgate, it was the mostly the parking project and the HVAC and the HVAC. MVU was a lot of things.
The wood chip, the whole, having all of that come out of the
The gym.
basement.
The gym, the entryway.
I can get you a whole list.
How long ago was that?
That was the first year I came here.
Okay.
The bond passed in 2018, and then we did it in the in FY19 while we were merging.
And those are 20-year bonds.
Oh, that one's out there for a while.
You gotta see it to the end.
Do you?
I don't think either one of us are. So, that's about it.
Thank you. As I'm sideways eyeing Devin.
Yeah, so I appreciate, sorry, the last two finance committee meetings, we've had multiple other board members attend also, which has been helpful for these conversations. So the budget that we just read through aligns with what the finance committee had recommended, which really is around the impacts of Act 127. And we've got the three slices that I like to talk about with Act 127. And we're fully utilizing all of them in this budget, and that's the recommendation. So the first slice is that Act 127 was designed to reallocate existing state funding to spread it to those disadvantaged students, the districts with more disadvantaged students. This is the piece that I think really is critical for us to utilize all of. This is the additional funding that's available to us at the same tax rate, the same equalized tax rate, that wasn't available to us previously. And so this is the point of Act 127. This is, you can think about it as historically, and probably going back to Act 60, I'll look at Don, right? So that was our first attempt at state funding, statewide funding. So since then, there's essentially been a penalty, a tax on our kids, and other rural communities across Vermont where we have the higher needs, and the old funding formulas weren't adequately funding those supports for those kids. And so this is our chance to rectify that now that the legislature's done their work to reevaluate that and realize that that's an issue. So the first step is taking advantage of that, being willing to stay at the same level of equalized tax rate, and with that comes the additional funding, which is going to let us keep our ESSER supports that have been in place, our higher level of interventionists. It's funded our math program that's been great and seen great results. It's going to fund our reading program that's coming up. So that's slice number one. Slice number two now is the space between no change in our equalized tax rate and a 5% increase in our equalized tax rate. And at this point, we look at this as, I think of it as an insurance premium. Are we willing to pay the 5% to mitigate the risk that we know, the risk of future larger tax rate increases? I think Peter summed it up well at our finance committee when he said, okay, if every school in Vermont utilizes this cap and increases their spending, but we're not increasing our taxes beyond the 5%, where's the money going to come from? And we don't know. We don't know. And so there are scenarios that, if you think about how it might be handled, the legislature may address it this year, they may not. They may address it next year. At some point, they're going to have to address it. And if we put ourselves at the 5% cap this year, no matter what happens, unless they change things, well, as the law stands now, we can't go more than a 5% increase the subsequent year, or the year after that, or the year after that, for 5 years. And so that's what we get for paying the 5%, is the assurance that in fiscal 26 and 27 and 28 and 29, we also cannot increase more than 5%. And our fear is that the state pulls their levers on the yield and essentially says, okay, we were underfunded by a whole bunch, so let's just rebase and make everybody pay 10 or 15% more as a baseline. Well, we want our 5% cap if that's the scenario. So that's our risk mitigation strategy. They may change things in a way that gets rid of the cap. That's kind of our, scenario B, right, that we contemplate. And so in scenario B, where they get rid of a cap, we don't want to lock ourselves in to this new higher 5% cap that we just put in place. We want the flexibility. So that's the reason that the spending to get to the cap comes in the form of facilities improvements that have been on the 5-year plan that our facilities committee has been working on. Not new ones, not, stuff we know we've needed, but we've had to spread it out over a long time because we don't have the funding available in 1 or 2 year budgets. Well, okay, so now's the time to move that up so that we accomplish two things: get to the 5% cap, get that locked in, and accomplish these projects. So that's slice number 2. So the finance committee all wanted to get there. Okay, so once you get to the end of slice number 2 and you've got your 5% cap, there's a third piece, which is you have an amount of money you can spend beyond the cap that doesn't affect tax rates and also doesn't trigger a statewide review, which is another piece of Act 127. And we don't want that review. We want to stay under that number. So that's slice number 3. And so if you get to the 5% increase, well, you ought to go beyond it. And so we can get something
right? So it's looking back to our facilities committee again, because that's again what we've added into that section. More of those projects that are on our list that hopefully we can accomplish in this 1 year, not knowing what year 2 and 3 and 4 holds, which will be up to the legislature. So this is our strategic way of, number one, supporting our students in slice number one, and all these facility projects support our students as well. But we're trying to do this in a way that is wise and strategic, knowing that we're also asking our community to step up and, number one, fund slice number one, and number two, even though it's an increase on slice number 2 to get the 5%, thinking of it as that insurance premium that guards against really big increases that may be down the road. We just don't know. And so we'll get something out of it in the meantime. We've got these projects that need to get done. Peter's got the list right next to me I keep looking at. I don't know if you want to read out some of those priorities from all of our buildings that we're looking to include in there. So
you want to do it?
Yeah, go for it.
So
I have a question before you go down that list. Can we bring it back to the conversation that we had during the last meeting, which was based off of these specific scenarios?
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us which scenario you ultimately recommended and that this is based off of?
It was that last scenario, so I don't.
Yeah, I think it's scenario 5. So this is at the 9.9% increased spending for long-term weighted ADM, but utilizing the 5% cap because obviously that was triggered. Yeah.
Okay, understood. Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's not exactly the same because I've received now 3 other versions of the ADM, so I included that in your information because every time I get a new version, I have to run all the numbers again, and it changes it by a couple $100,000 potentially. So it's slightly different, but the same philosophy.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if you can show this on the screen. So at our last facilities meeting, we looked at how do we get to that 9.9%. What projects can we get done? And Laura and Jason and Julie and Steve had gotten together to look at projects that, as Devin had stated, that are on our list, maybe for next year, the year after that, or the year after that, depending the priority of the project. And you'll go through these projects, and some of them are needed this year, and we were still putting them off. But and there are other projects that were recommended, or I shouldn't say recommended, needed, that the facility task force said, let's put that off. One of those was the Franklin resurfacing. I think we had 30,000 in there.
Oh, 300.
300,000, I'm sorry, in there. We thought that it is definitely a need, but it's something that we thought we could put off even in this budget. But if we go to Highgate, it says Highgate brick roof. We're not putting a brick roof on. We're putting a roof on the brick building, just to be clear. So, and it's leaking now. Jason, when I did the facilities walk with him this summer, he brought that to my attention, that and it's got valleys and stuff. It's not set up right, so that gives us an opportunity to fix that problem and put a new roof on at the same time. So that's a $750,000. Putting in new basketball hoops in the gym, $20,000. That will be an improvement that people will see. HVAC in Highgate, the last one, that's $300,000. The brick building fire alarm system, $100,000. And then this last one, we went around about anybody that was on that meeting about the white building and improvements and stuff that is needed there, but do we want to invest in that building? And we came up with that we need to do engineering study on that building to make a determination. Do we want to put money into that building? And if not, how do we account for that space that's needed as putting an addition on or what to do there. So we've put money in the budget to do that. And you can see some are in yellow, some are in green. The ones that are in yellow are ones that we would look to first if we wanted to cut something. We would look at it all actually, but we put in yellow what we thought were things that we could put off if we had to. And then we look at MVU. Everyone knows that parking lot is in dire need. That would be something great that we could get done. $500,000 there.
Phase 1.
Phase 1, exactly. That's not covering the whole thing. Field hockey scoreboard. That is a really inexpensive one that we should put in anyways. They don't have a scoreboard. They've been borrowing from a different.
They use one that they have or try to ship.
It's a mobile one. That's not very good.
Right. So we would like to support the field hockey program by doing that. And one that it's in yellow, but I feel strongly MVU parking lot lighting is not where it should be. And to be safe, I think this is another good project that I'd like to see get done. $125,000 for the lighting in the parking lot at MVU. And then we go to Swanton. We've got some.
Peter, before you go to Swanton, and I think you said it, but I want to reinforce, the roof in Highgate has to be fixed. We can patch it and patch it and patch it. But whether it's this year, next year, or 3 years from now, we're going to have to fix it, and the taxpayers are going to have to pay for it. So if we pass on it this year because we say, well, you know, maybe we don't want it, they can do quite as much. It's not like it's going to go away. In fact, it's going to get worse. So I just think that the people who haven't been discussing it regularly, you know, like the pavement in the parking lot, it's bad. And we need to do it. And probably shouldn't put it off. But the roof, we don't have any choice. No choice.
It's been leaking for as long as I've been here, so 12 years.
Yeah, it's going to start doing some structural.
Peter, what about like the other next phase of the MVU roof?
That's already in the budget.
That's already in.
So
well,
he's just doing the additional
This is
column,
just-
the other one we proposed
That
last
was
time.
already budgeted previously.
right. So we're good for we're doing one this summer,
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
but there's still 2 more phases, right?
Yes, we didn't add another phase because we thought that the Highgate roof was.
Well, we already have one in here, so we've already signed the contract for that phase,
Yeah,
and
but
that's
he's
coming
talking
out of
about wanting to
25.
Yeah, I'm talking about after.
Well, that would be fiscal year 26, so there's nothing on here for fiscal year 26.
No, but you're
Yeah, I
right.
think he was
Like,
asking, could we move a second
wanna
phase?
move
Move
it
it up.
Well, we'll have to. I mean, eventually it's gonna.
It's going to have to happen.
Right.
So we've got the same. We're looking at the same contractor, right? That's doing the Evergreen. So it's like we only have so many resources, and that's the other thing of trying. We got to pass this budget.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like we got to make sure that we have resources because it's for this year. It's not something we're budgeting for
Yeah. Okay.
or bonding for previous years. We've got to spend the money this year, so we got to make sure we can get the project done this year.
We've had some jobs that we'd like to do that we don't have the lead time.
Right, the timeline just doesn't work.
The materials, why we get the materials and get the vendors, we're out 2 years.
Which is a good point that we talked about in facilities. We're going to be, if the budget doesn't pass on town meeting day, it's going to be difficult to get these projects done. Because we need to start signing contracts and getting stuff lined up. So it'll make it difficult if we can't do that. So Swanton, so Babcock roof and insulation, $500,000. So we've added that. Central Roof Valleys, 25,000, and then HVAC and electrical equipment for Swanton, 712,000, and that's just the equipment, right? We
Just
talked about that.
purchasing the equipment.
Yeah, that's not putting it in.
Dehumidification equipment.
We'd have to budget that in the future year. And just a side note, we did the Babcock windows replacement. We did put that in with the surplus funds that we voted on in our last meeting. So I believe that total comes to, it's an additional $3,826,350 for those that I just went through.
Which would bring us up to the 9.9%
Yeah.
threshold. So just to restate for people what I heard, your proposal is that the facility, I struggle with that, especially lately because finance and facility have been working closely. The recommendation is to put forward a budget to this board for vote that has, is taking advantage of the 5% cap on tax rate increase and also a 9.9% increase to long-term weighted average ADM spending. Every time they change a law, they make the acronym longer. So that in the primary place where that additional tax capacity spending is coming from is through these proposed facility projects.
So, as far as the facility committee, we're gonna leave it up to finance to make the recommendation on how much, but they came to us and said, if we go to this route, what would you like to see? And this is what we're saying. These are the projects we need. There's more projects out there. And as you can see, we've been looking at these projects, the ones that I just talked about. Dawn and Rennick and I have seen these projects out there, knew they were coming. Certainly, if we can get these projects done, it's a great opportunity. But as I said, I still don't completely understand how all this works, but these are, it's not like we're throwing money out the door. We have legitimate projects that have been put off that need to be done. If this is an opportunity to do it, that's great.
I think your point is really important too, not to beat a dead horse, but some of these things will have to be put into motion very early, or they won't happen. So I may be coming to you even before, if this is how you choose to proceed, even before the budget is passed, and say we may need to sign a letter of intent, and that's why we've sort of prioritized these, because we may have to sign a letter of intent allowing us to only move forward if the budget passes, but some of these contractors may want something like that in place so they can order materials or something like that to put things in motion for the summer. Like, that's how tight it is. If they're not requiring that, then they will be at my door the day after town meeting asking me if the budget passed, and they will want a contract and equipment will start rolling. So that's where we are.
In Devon, the intent of this excess tax capacity, and to Toby's earlier point about having it be in facilities and capital projects rather than necessarily doing a lot of program expanding, because those would be ongoing costs. Using this one time, because this is the only time we're going to have a big jump in our long-term weighted average daily membership. And that's how we're going to be dividing up our budget from now on, is with that number instead of equalized pupils. This is a one-time jump. Then in future years, we're not going to put a new roof on the Babcock building every day, but the board could look at reprioritizing funds and the tax rate and make adjustments in next year's budget, depending on what the statewide education spending is, and looking at those protections. It's a cushion to hopefully absorb without our local taxpayers taking the brunt of the hit. That's the part I think.
Right, and I don't know that I'd say cushion.
Not cushion. No,
it's number one, it's risk mitigation.
Yes.
We're trying to reduce our risk in future budget years because we have flexibility. It's the increased flexibility that lowers our risk going into the future. So if, the state funding formula or laws change dramatically in FY26 because the legislature realizes they don't have the money to pay for it, we want to be in a position where we're not locking ourselves in this year for all that spending in FY26 and 27 and 28. So we want
healthcare premium increases.
Exactly. We're going to have other things increasing. We'll need to reallocate that. Yes.
I've got a question after Rennie.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a point that Laura had made, that if we don't hit the 5% cap this year, that next year we may be at a starting point of a 5% increase anyway and not have any of that built-in tax capacity. So I think that's an important point to make, and Laura, if I didn't say that correctly, please correct me.
No, you did, just because of the spending or other things in the environment throughout the state, we will probably be seeing a significant increase before we even look at our budget next year. And if we don't secure the 5% cap this year, we don't have it next year, and then the full burden would be on MVSD.
So I think that's a good point to try to get out to the community, that if we don't take advantage of this year, then we're starting in the hole already this time next year, just the way that things are going in the rest of the state.
Is Joanne?
Also, just point out the tax rate where it was, or do you think that's important right now?
Peter?
So, say the legislature doesn't do anything, right, and we're back here next year, are we in the same situation where we're gonna wanna go to 10% because we only are gonna have to pay up to 5%?
It's the same game, but
So-
we won't have this giant jump, that'll be the difference. This one-time increase in ADM and then therefore increase in weight, some of which was from free and reduced
Like
rate
slice
lunch.
number 1 goes away, as
Right.
we talked about, but yeah, we're still talking about the 0
I get that,
5%.
but we'll still have this year's budget as it is,
Mm-hmm.
and we can go 10% above that.
Mhm.
How many years can we do that?
It's not the budget, it's the spending, per
Spending.
long-term weighted ADM.
It just seems like,
And that's why I believe it's the legislature's going to step in. They're going to have to in some fashion.
They're gonna look at it and say, what in the H did we do?
Or they're gonna address the yield,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and the
because they
other,
don't know how to do anything else.
the other piece is the expectation in this model that the legislature put in place is that the first year, a lot of people are going to be hitting caps. And then the second year, a few will be needing to hit caps. And then it will equalize and come down to a more moderate place. That's what the design of it was. This is the first year. We'll see how it plays out.
Right, and that depends on some other schools, some of our larger schools, bringing their spending down over
Right.
the course of 5 years. And that would be where money comes from, but a lot of unknowns there.
Yes. And they are trying, because they don't want to hit the 10% cap either.
Right.
Right, so.
It's just they get 5 years to do it and we only have 1 to make this,
Do we, how far are we from scenarios as far as what the impact's gonna be on a house?
We have the CLAs.
I've run the numbers on it.
It's, the CLA impact is gonna be sizable, depending on which town. I think the smallest was.
You just sent something on that.
It's in the workbook,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think,
The scenarios are in the workbook too?
If you go to the last, slide 19, on the bottom, there's CLA tax impact, MVSD draft 5.
And we're solid on those now or no?
It's solid based on this draft that you have in front of you, and the ADMs were frozen today, and the CLA
We're frozen last
were
week.
frozen today, actually.
Today.
And that's per $100,000, just to be clear. I know typically we've used $250,000 homestead value. A lot of business managers now are using the 100,000 because people's homes are way over that or way, so we're just saying, you can do the multiplication yourself or using the $100,000.
The volatility of the housing market is just such an impact right now. But did you want to show the equalized tax rate?
Devin,
Sure.
not even we wait.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I want all this to be kind of in context, and
Right.
I think we need a little more time to prepare that whole conversation. So for next week when we have input forum with the community, and we'll throw in that plug. What's the date next week? July 16th?
July.
July.
Yeah, it's wishful thinking.
That'd be awesome.
With past budget, yes.
January 16th, here at MVU at 7 p.m. is our community input forum on the budget. So as many people as can be here to attend that. We love to have as many people as we
7
can.
o'clock, I believe so.
So we have one more meeting after that to finalize the budget. So it's kind of a last call for folks in the community to come in and have a say.
Rennick, did you have another comment or question, or you just forgot to put your hand down?
Jen, are we looking for a formal recommendation to the whole board on the budget and which direction we're going, as Megan was kind of alluding to in the beginning? Or
we did that at finance committee.
Sorry, say that again?
I think we did that during our finance committee. It wasn't last night, it was the one before that.
Last one as well.
Monday or last week.
It's a blur.
So no, Rennick, not tonight.
Why we're echoing?
Somebody's got their volume.
It's showing both of the MVSD central office mics as unmuted.
Mine's muted.
I'm
I'm not in anywhere.
Sorry, I'll mute the other one.
I just.
It's you, Laura.
I left the meeting.
But you're presenting.
You're muted now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty.
I hit leave, the big red box.
I believe you.
So
All right.
at our budget information meeting, we'll get not our information meeting, our input meeting, excuse me, next week. We'll have an opportunity to hear from community members, and then the board can have a conversation to give really formal direction as to which scenario we're going to bring to our January 23rd board meeting.
January 23rd.
Yes, the 23rd.
And that's where we would need to the board would need to adopt a budget and the warning, et cetera. So any input will really be important to the administration so we can prepare that for the 23rd.
So next week, when we have that meeting here, we're gonna go through the budget, pretty much outlining the significant increases or increases in how we're gonna do it in line items. And at that point, we're gonna share what we think that's impact of the CLA will be.
Mhm.
We're still formulating agenda or how we're gonna do next week's meeting.
Yes, we have the draft of the old presentation. I'll be working on, with Laura and others, on draft of a new presentation because it's substantially different, because we have different scenarios to show, looking at input, things that have been put in place in this current year so that we can talk about what we have done and then what we propose to do next. And then obviously the tax rate proposals in the scenario that we're working through right now, maximizing capacity and tax rate information. The history of our equalized tax rate, which I think is very important to show, because even without the cap, our equalized tax rate would be less than when we merged. So, we have this really is in many ways an opportunity that the board is looking at, and it's something we're gonna try and put into this presentation so it's clear.
I think we took a lot of notes when the finance committee met last as far as points that we wanted to make.
Right, next agenda item is, warrants. Devin, you wanna?
Like me to read the warrants? Okay, we had the warrants for December, accounts payable, $1,303,644.10. Payroll checks, $51,390.97. Payroll other disbursements, $1,736,763.86. Payroll deductions, $680,083.99 for a total of $3,771,882.92.
Thank you. Somebody like to make the motion to accept warrants as read?
I'll make that motion, Jen.
Thank you, Joanne. And a
I'll
second.
second it.
Okay, thank you, Rennick. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 9-0. And then we have a food service action?
No action.
No action, okay.
Oh, I thought you needed an action on
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I forgot about that. Thank you.
the budget is sort of a.
I actually don't know if I need action on it, but it's okay, we probably should. So, the first thing I'll say is I included a copy of well, it's that time of year again when we need to go out to bid for food service management. We've been extending our contracts for the last 4 years, but we can no longer do that. We're at the end of what was allowable. And so, typically I don't bring that to you until we've already solicited bids, and I feel like I keep missing a piece of the process. I want to provide an opportunity, we've done this with the admin or the admin team, but provide the board also with the opportunity to sort of weigh in on their satisfaction with the food service management companies that we have. The RFPs that you write for food service management it's a very scripted template from the child nutrition program, but if there are things that you want to change in your program, you know, you want the lines to go faster, so you want more workers, you want more offerings, you want, you know, more fruits and vegetables, you want to buy more local, all of those things, then this is the opportunity when you create the RFP to be that specific so that the bids that you receive then include that. Not to say you can't change things after, but you have to have a pretty good idea, and what's allowable to change within that contract is pretty strict. And I've never brought that to the board prior to bringing you the actual bid. So I guess I'm just stating that if you have feedback outside of things that you've already shared with the principal or the advisory committee that we have for the food service management companies, please feel free to email those to me or talk to me or reach out to your principal so they can share them, or reach out to Julie. I will be launching those bids it has to go to the state to be reviewed first for 30 days on January 22nd. We will be awarding in May, so it's a very lengthy process between now and then, but I'll have to have it to the state, as I said, by the 22nd of January. So
you've already shared this with the administration?
I shared the fact that we were doing this and looked for feedback. I have not received any yet outside of what it was reflected in the minutes from the advisory meetings.
I want to support whatever the principals say they do.
Any issues that you wanted to see
Otherwise,
changed?
I have
No, we actually just polled all high school, actually all MVU students, just to ask them, you know, food options and what they like, what they don't like, and I was actually looking at them just a little while ago. So we have our annual meeting coming up, I think 2 weeks, another meeting coming up with the food service. So we're going to present them with, you know, all the feedback from students and such. But yeah, we've been very happy with the amount of choice and options that students have.
That's the best recommendation the kids are needing.
Just like, I wanted to make sure you have the opportunity to weigh in, because it ultimately is your decision.
Are there any bidders?
Well, we haven't gone out to bid yet,
No.
but I think there will be some competition this year. Sometimes we have a hard time, but I've had multiple vendors that have reached out, and there are others in the area too, but not to say we're not happy with the one that we have, because I think, as Dan said, we are, but I think we'll have some competition this year, yes.
What's the timeline?
So I have to send it to the state for review in January, and then it has to be advertised for 30 to 60 days in public settings. There's a pre-bid conference that's required, there's a question period, bids are gonna be due March 29th, and then it has to go back to the state to review all the bids in April, and then we'll award in May.
So after all that, it comes to the board and we vote, and we don't have to take the low bidder.
What does the state do? Will they eliminate bids if they don't take something? What's their purpose?
They will make sure that the RFP is written in a way that is fair competition, I guess I should say, and that the things that are required in a food service management contract are in fact in place. But we utilize their template, and we would just be adding to that, we wouldn't be taking anything away. It's 45 pages or something.
It'd be hard to start from scratch if we decided next week we wanted to start our own, so it'd be almost impossible.
You might be looking for a new business manager. That's okay.
It's all right. I can't imagine. Jen, before we close our
Yes, I
meeting.
am, are we done talking about that, because I have more to talk about food service, sorry. Are we done with the contract, no one has any feedback, okay. So you've heard me bring to you before, the opportunity to become a community eligibility provision school or provision 2 school, meaning that we can feed all students for free. I've brought that to you in the past when we did not have universal meals and we weren't already serving free meals to students. We would not be able to cash flow a community eligibility provision and feed all students for free. Previously, because our free and reduced or direct certification numbers were not high enough, now because we have Medicaid students showing up on our direct certification list, our direct or identified student direct certification students is high enough that we qualify for the community eligibility provision to feed students for free. We're actually up over 40% in most of our schools, and so I'm trying to make this in a way that makes sense. We are already serving students for free. Right now, we're serving all students free meals, I should say, under universal meals. That is a much more cumbersome process if you're outside the community eligibility provision. If we are in the community eligibility provision, then we do not have to have any free and reduced price hot lunch applications done. We do not have to do verification of those applications. We don't have to, therefore, have students punch in their numbers when they go through the point of sale, because there's no identification of their status. It's simply a percentage of status that gets applied to each school building based on this direct certification. And so we've talked with the Abbey. I've talked with principals to some degree. We've talked with my internal staff who manages these programs, and we think now might be the time to do that, and it will cash flow. We actually, not to say we'll be making more money, but we may actually create a slightly smaller surplus if we join into the community eligibility provision versus how we're doing it now, and the administrative burden would be much, much lower. And once you're in for 5 years. You can leave if you want to, and the reason the state has kind of worked with the federal government and extended some deadlines, because what this also does is take the burden, some of the additional financial burden to support the food service management as far as like reimbursement for claiming off of the state funding, and it then would go to the federal funding. And so there's kind of been a push to work with schools and support schools and push back deadlines, so they're letting us use data from like our worst month versus a certain point in time. They're actually, if we do this now, they'll let us go back to December for claims. But I think it's something that would be easier for our families, easier to understand, less administrative burden internally and externally, so I don't see a reason not to do it, but it is kind of a big deal in that if universal meals went away on a state level and everyone in the state could no longer feed kids for free, that would impact our reimbursement through community eligibility, and we would then have to probably revisit that again. And so, but the odds of that happening are probably, all the information I have are not very good, but it's not something you want to start and then end either, so I feel fairly confident that universal meals will continue. So I think we're safe, and if we have to do that, if we have to pull the plug on it later on and stop having all free meals, then everyone in the state would be losing universal meals also, so it wouldn't just be a MVSD change, it would be a statewide thing that everybody would be dealing with. I did not say that well, it's 9 o'clock, I'm sorry. It's very complicated, and I was trying to simplify it.
You feel comfortable you have the time to do it?
It will be easier in the end, so yes, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Will it improve access to breakfast and other
We already have
meals?
breakfast. I believe it will secure suppers, so you automatically will become area eligible for CACFP or the supper program that we have in after school too. So. So if you're area eligible, then you don't basically. Your percentage of free reduced price lunch just makes everyone eligible to receive free meals in your area if it goes above a certain level. And so all the kids in our program get free meals. If that's not the case, then only the free kids and the reduced kids get those rates, and then paid kids that are going that have to pay for lunch would have to then pay for supper, or the school ends up subsidizing it. And that we've had to do that in the past because we've lost area eligibility, and I believe with the CEP program that we automatically will therefore get this kind of into this other program. So again, the administrative burden is much less. It's less confusing for parents.
Yeah.
One thing I just wanted to talk with the Abbey about is not only do we need to be able to cash flow it, but I didn't want quality to go down, because sometimes that's the concern. So now all of a sudden you're getting a federally subsidized program, we don't want our quality to go down. We're really proud of that, and so we've talked through that. We can have the same quality of program that we have now for the same price,
You don't
basically.
like grits.
Sorry?
You don't like grits.
No.
So are you looking for
I don't think I need one, but I think it's important enough decision that we should probably have a board motion, yeah.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second
so we get Dom and Toby?
Moving to a community eligibility provision?
You have to pursue it. As long as you decide it's the one you want to do or whatever, come back, make a motion.
Any questions, comments? Alright, seeing none,
Excuse me, who seconded it?
Oh, Toby. Don was the first and Toby was the second. Alright, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Alright, motion carries 9-0. Alright,
I don't want to lose sight of this.
I have a question for the basic manager. It's kind of quick. I said I'd ask it. I think it's a question for you. The MVSD is currently fiscal agent for one program, correct?
For Indian education.
Correct. My second question is if the administration was ever asked to be a fiscal agent for another program, would that be brought to the board?
That would be a decision I would make.
No, I don't see that. It would be taking up administrative time and resources, so I don't know that we would do it without a board, going to the board as a decision. I would think so.
I just wondering if it's in well, as board members, one, should we even know what we're fiscal agency for? Because it never comes up annually, like who or what, and I don't know if anyone's ever been asked, oh, we want to get a grant, we need a fiscal agent, will you be our fiscal agent? So that's my question.
Mm-hmm.
Would the board be aware of that proposal by a group if they came to you and said,
mean, I think the board's been very aware of the ones that have happened to date.
Which is just the one,
Well,
right?
we use it, but Bookmobile.
What's that?
Bookmobile was the other one
Yeah,
that we
right,
no longer,
right.
but that was the only other one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're no longer there for sure.
No.
Okay, that's fine.
The way I would imagine it would happen would be that there would be preliminary conversation, because I think it's a very serious thing. We therefore carry a significant amount of liability by being a fiscal agent. We, as a school district, have very, our audit standards, our regulations and rules, are the things that govern us, what is best practice is.
That's fine.
Yeah, so they would have to follow all of that
So
as well.
it's very likely the MVSD board would know about it if we were gonna take on that responsibility for another entity.
I would think so, because I think it's
Yeah, I
pretty
wouldn't do it without a
serious.
board motion and a proposal.
Okay, thank you.
And I would discourage anyone from asking.
All right, so we have future agenda items, budget, sorry. District attendance committee updates.
We'll have ag advisory.
Ag advisory.
Yeah, at the next
So
MVU
Jen,
meeting.
I think Peter maybe said it too, but this request should go to facilities committee.
It's
And,
on the long-term plan.
looking at it, and I don't know whether it's in reserve or the money or carryover or something next year, but it needs to be addressed. It's almost, as I look at it, it makes me think of the locker room, where nobody said anything.
Well, it's on our plan, we have talked about it, Jay it wasn't,
I don't think, I guess I would say as a facilities person, I haven't heard it,
it's on our capital plan.
yeah. But it seems to me some money should be a priority.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about that is I think it's important to stick to the process, because we do have a plan that we put a lot of time in, is developed over the years, and a lot of people come with suggestions and thoughts outside of that and don't follow the process sometimes.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, but if the lighting is as bad in there as it is, it reflects on us. We've talked about putting in new seats, if we're gonna put in new seats. So anyway, I guess I'm gonna say, I wanna be a champion for this getting a fair shot.
So, yeah, I agree. I'd like to see, I'm not saying budget for it or anything like that, but I'd like to see it on our agenda so I could hear from Jason and the others and see what is the current lighting like? I know what she's told us to get it and see where we're at. That's
When you
all.
think of a 25,000 or 30,000 expenditure, which was convince people that 55 million, it might get a few votes. So I don't know where it is on your agenda, or our agenda, is it 3 years out or 4 years out?
I'd have to look, yeah, that's something that Jason and I he had told me where he would like to place it, but it's not
Yep.
something that is just lights either, it involves a lot of other
That's what I
things,
say.
yeah.
Yeah, that's why we need to talk about
It may
it.
not be this simple.
Yes,
It may not be
exactly.
this simple.
So I'm gonna
Yeah,
email
that's
her
right.
tomorrow and thank her for
Yes,
bringing this to us.
we'll bring
it up at our
facility.
Yep, 100%.
Hey, Jen, real quick, just everyone drive home carefully. Roads are pretty bad out there, so be careful driving home.
Yeah, I
Thank you, everyone.
just looked at my Ring cameras because my daughter freaked out for me. And I was just like, oh.
Totally good with go.
All right, so who'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Peter's the first. Devin's the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Motion carries 9-0. Thank you, everybody.
Recording has